Fantastic. Okay.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this first virtual annual meeting of the Council. My name is Councillor Victoria Obaze, and I am the Speaker of the Council, and I will be chairing the first part of the meeting. Thank you for attending this special event. We will be electing a new Speaker of the Council and appointing councillors to serve as chairs and members of the committees for the forthcoming year, as well as hearing from petitioners and considering a number of reports. This meeting is being webcast via the Council's website, and members of the press and public may follow and listen to proceedings remotely. If during the meeting a technical error occurs with the live webcast stream, which cannot be resolved within a reasonable period of time, then the meeting will be closed and the remaining
Speaker, you're on mute, I think.
switch on your camera at that point. Oh. Apologies, I'm on the mute. I was on the mute, so I'm going to start again. Sorry about that. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this first virtual annual meeting of the Council. My name is Councillor Victoria Obaze, and I am the Speaker of the Council, and I will be chairing the first part of this meeting. Thank you for attending this special event. We will be electing a new Speaker of the Council and appointing councillors to serve as chairs and members of committees for the forthcoming year, as well as hearing from petitioners and considering a number of reports. This meeting is being webcast via the Council's website, and members of the press and public may follow and listen to the proceedings remotely. If during the meeting a technical error occurs with the live webcast stream, which cannot be resolved within a reasonable period of time, then the meeting will be closed and the remaining business will be deferred to a subsequent meeting of the Council on a date to be determined and notified through the publication of the agenda on the Council's website. Participants are also reminded that when addressing the meeting, you must switch your microphone on and may also switch on your camera at that point. Before the meeting began, I confirm that all members present were able to see and hear me and are able to contribute to the meeting. If you experience any technical difficulties, please contact Benny in Democratic Services as soon as possible. The current COVID-19 pandemic has had a massive impact on the borough. I would like to pay tribute to all those who have worked tirelessly to support key services to residents during this time. I would also like to express condolences to all those, including council staff, who have lost their lives through this horrible disease. Our thoughts and prayers are with their families at this difficult time. I now call on the council to pause to observe a minute silence to remember those affected by the pandemic. Before we continue our meeting, I would like to address the council on my year in office. Good evening and welcome. I have had a truly memorable year as the speaker of this amazing borough. I have had opportunities and experiences I would not have had in any other role, and would like to thank the mayor and my colleagues for making this possible when they elected me to this position 17 months ago. Being elected as the first Black female first citizen of this borough was an honor as well as a responsibility. It has been important to me to continue to work of my predecessors. In representing all sections of our community in Tower Hamlets, whilst also bringing my own cultural heritage into my work. Some examples of this were in the events I held. One was a fundraising event to celebrate Black History Month, which has not been done by the speaker before. And another was the introduction of the flavors of African food and dance to the annual Speakers Charity Ball, both of which were very well received. As the first Black woman speaker, I am proud to say that I was part of the Black Lives Matter campaign in the borough. As you all know, I am a strong supporter of women and held an afternoon tea event for International Women's Day to celebrate women everywhere, past and present. We had some inspirational speakers, and it was a very memorable afternoon. I had further fundraising curry night planned for this year, which unfortunately, like so many things in our lives, that at the moment was affected by the pandemic, so did not go ahead. Despite not being able to carry out all the fundraising that was planned, I still hope to be able to make generous donations to the charities I am supporting, which will help them in the vital work they are doing, which is even more in demand during these difficult times. These charities are the Alzheimer's Society Dementia Project, Providence Row, and Bangladeshi Parents and Carers Association. I would like to give special thanks to the generous organizations who supported my fundraising through sponsorship. The Canary Wharf Group, Ballimore, the London Tea Exchange, and Mulali, and to all those who supported by attending and donating in some way, it is sincerely appreciated. I was invited by His Royal Highness Esubuari to visit the Federal Capital Territory of Abuja in Nigeria and went for 2 weeks at the beginning of the year. During my visit, I met the Speaker of Imo State and some of the House of Assemblies. Members, we discussed Tower Hamlets and I felt very proud talking to the people I met about what has been achieved here. Across the many events I have attended, I have received a warm welcome everywhere I have been. Whether it was celebrating the achievements of our community, organizations, or visiting schools to talk about knife crime. Some of the highlights of my time were definitely the numerous award ceremonies and celebrations showcasing the achievements and talents in our borough. There were too many to list them all, but they included events at the London Muslim Center and the Chinese School, as well as music from the Tower Hamlets Arts and Music Education Service. I must add that this group are amazing. Their big band performed at the Speaker's Annual Charity Ball a few years ago and gave a really professional performances enjoyed by all the guests. I would also like to give a mention here to the Sir John Cass and Red Coast School Steel Orchestra, who performed at my charity ball last December. They were truly outstanding. They played some excellent tunes, and given the number of them and amount of equipment that had to be moved, they were so professional, a real credit to the borough. There have been events celebrating youth work and careers in pathology, and young women qualifying as tea masters, as well as Curry Awards, community champions, football leagues, parent champions, and our beautiful parks and open spaces at Tower Hamlets in blue. So much to celebrate and be proud of. I took part in National Democracy Week and chaired the Youth Council, both great opportunities to get our young people interested and engaged in the democratic process. It was definitely interesting to hear their points of view. I met naval officers from Mexico and Argentina, visiting our borough for the first time via the docks, and attended Cadets National Band competition at the Tower of London. I attended important commemorative events, Remembrance Day at Tower Hill and the Martyrs Day at Al-Tabali Park. These are some of the many things I have done during my time as Speaker, and I have enjoyed every bit of it. I am so proud to be part of this borough. Thank you very much. Thank you all for this opportunity. I now hand over to the Corporate Director, Governance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good evening, everyone. I understand that the Mayor and the Leader of the Opposition wish to respond to the Speaker's address. I now call upon Mayor John Biggs to speak. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, as Matt was saying, it's been a great privilege to have worked alongside you in the past, well, you said a year, but the past 17 months in your role as Speaker. And it's obviously a tragedy that all speakers in London have been unable to fulfil their public duties during the time of the COVID pandemic, although we're gradually creeping back to a form of normality. I think you performed with an elegance and a dignity which has brought good reputation to the borough and our office of Speaker. I think, as you say, as the first black woman who's been a Speaker in our council, you symbolise our diversity and our support of both genders in our council chamber. A lot of councils, it might surprise people nowadays, a lot of councils across the country are still very blokish, and it's good that we have a greater gender representation in our leadership in Tower Hamlets, and that people like yourself, Victoria, can act as beacons and symbols of progress and of leadership to people, particularly young people in our community. And so I want to commend the work that you've done. And I do know sometimes you hear about members of parliament who lose their seats and they wait outside their house for the car to come and collect them and take them to their ministerial offices because it's no longer there. So I do know from experience it's quite hard to be an ex-speaker. So what we need to do is show you maximum respect and to make sure that the skills you've learned in this period will be used for you to be a continuing ambassador on behalf of the people of Tower Hamlets, and that you can return to fulfilling the day-to-day roles of a councillor in your representative role, serving the people of Whitechapel, which is something you've done with great dignity. But I know also that prior to being Speaker, you have been very active in the community in a number of ways, in your church in Stepney, with a variety of organisations, and I know that the links that you've made as Speaker will be ones that you can use in the future to be a great citizen of our borough. I think being a former Speaker is a particularly important and dignified badge of office and achievement and status within our community, and that we should be proud of the role that you fulfilled on behalf of the people of our borough, and offer you maximum respect, I think is the technical term used by younger people nowadays. Maybe that's coming out of use now, but you've done a great job for us. You're a great figurehead for our borough, and as the first person of Tower Hamlets, I pay tribute to you, to your honesty, your humility, and the work that you've done selflessly on behalf of local people in your 17 months of office. So thank you, Victoria, on behalf, I hope, of all of the majority councillors and indeed all of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor John Biggs. I now call upon the Leader of the Opposition, Councillor Peter Gold, to speak. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. This is a joyous moment to pay tribute to a wonderful person. And I think I would like to say very much to talk about not only the role and the office, but Victoria, who I knew before she became a councillor, when she tried to be a councillor, and when she joined us here. She has always been someone who has never lost that wonderful smile on her face. She's always been Victoria. She's never stood on ceremony, but she's always shown love. She's always shown genuine affection to anybody she ever comes across. And Victoria rightly talks of much of our borough and said, she referred to Black Lives Matter. I would defy anybody anywhere in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets or the United Kingdom that could not would find anybody better to symbolise what is great and wonderful about humanity when we think of Victoria. She's had adversity in her life because we've talked about it. Many, many things have not gone necessarily the way that she in some ways would have hoped. But always there has been that smile, always there has been that wonderful dignity, and always there has been that hand of friendship to those who she meets, frequently with that great belly laugh that only Victoria can do. Even on occasions of great solemnity, such as Remembrance Sunday, there was the love and affection for our borough and the people of our borough. Victoria, on the one hand, we may slightly disagree on politics, but on a human basis, I'm proud that you have led our borough. I'm proud to serve on the council, and I'm proud to call you a friend.
Thank you, Councillor Peter Golds. We have further requests. I do have a list, so I will go down the list accordingly and call your name. Please keep your thanks brief, as we do have quite a big agenda today. So I now call Councillor Sabina Akhtar.
Hello everyone. Thank you to Councillor Victoria Obazi for your wonderful work throughout the year. You was our first black woman speaker in this borough. It's a huge proud moment for us. Your involvement during the Black Lives Matter movement was amazing and you showed good leadership. I've always seen your involvement in various community activities and you have carried out your civic duties with honour and dignity. During this difficult national crisis, you have shown great support, working with the vulnerable people, and I know you will continue to do so. You have been accessible for all, and whatever communication needed from you, you have always been responsive. You have been a great advocate for us women, and truly been inspirational for many. I love the way you say girl power, and yes, we can do it. Your positive attitude made you the ideal role model for our borough, and I'm sure many will miss you in this role. And once again, thank you for your work, especially during this difficult time. And I hope to see you always smiling the way you always do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I call upon Councillor Rabina Khan?
Thank you, Asmat. And good evening to everybody. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you for the way you have carried yourself. And I have to say, as the lone Liberal Democrat councillor here in opposition and standing here as a woman, you have been very fair in the way you've chaired the full council meetings. You've allowed me to speak, you've called me to speak, and you've looked over to see if I have my hand up or not. And I really deeply appreciate that, the fact you went and did this. But one thing I will always remember you by is that in the 10 years that I've been a councillor, no one has ever referred to me as darling in full council, but you have. And that shows your compassion and your humanity. And I think very poignantly on the eve of Black History Month, which is about to start tomorrow, how fitting it is that I'm here sitting in full council with you, Councillor Victoria Obaze, as our speaker, who is outgoing, but who will be remembered for everything that you have done in the last 17 months in your role representing this borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Can I call upon Councillor Rachel Blake?
Good evening, and I just wanted to put on record my thanks to Victoria for, I think, as long as I've lived in Tower Hamlets, I've known you and considered you a friend. You're probably one of the first people I ever met when moving here, and so you are a true representation of what Tower Hamlets means to so many of us, and I think you've been an outstanding speaker in this role and really brought people together, and also really made the role just so passionate and so meaningful about what our community is, and I'm really grateful, and so I wanted to put on record my thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Can I call upon Councillor Asma Islam?
Good evening, everyone. It was an absolute honour and privilege to be able to second your nomination this time, last AGM. Victoria Obazi, Stepney girl power, as Sabina Akhtar said. It's been an absolute pleasure to watch you become the Speaker of the Council and the way you conducted yourself. I've attended your events, and the flair and the culture, the motivation, the positivity that you bring is second to none. It was an absolute amazing moment to watch the first Black female speaker. And, you know, I find myself really blessed that I was able during this term to see two landmarks when it comes to the speaker post. One was with this Sabina Akhtar when she was the first Bangladeshi female speaker, and with you. And what a great way. I just want to say thank you on behalf of the whole borough, on behalf of everyone here tonight. We owe you a lot, and I know, Victoria, you're going to go on to do some amazing stuff.
Thank you, Councillor Islam. Can I call upon Councillor Kahir Chowdhury?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. Victoria, it has been a pleasure to have participated in these meetings under your stewardship. And as colleagues said, it is an honor to join with them to pay a tribute to you. You have been a great ambassador for the borough, and we are extremely proud of the achievements and what you have done for this borough and symbolizing the diversity and beautifying the diversity of this borough beyond this borough. So as Black Lives Matter identify the existence of structural policies of inequality, while short and long-term remedies are being sought, part of that remedy is having more Black people in position of power and influence. And I'm confident that many Black people are inspired by you, who will in turn consider a role in public life. With the economic upheaval induced by COVID-19, the voluntary sector are cash-strapped. Therefore, I think it is pertinent to congratulate you on the funds you have raised for your nominated charities, which will go a long way in delivering valuable services in our communities, congruent with our shared common endeavour of enriching our residents' lives. So once again, we are all very proud of you, Victoria, and thank you very much for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. Can I now call upon Councillor Abdullah, please?
Good evening, and thank you very much, Asmat. And a good evening to all the fellow councillors, for whom some I haven't seen for a long time, but more important to all our residents, hopefully logging on this evening. What can I say? Can I start by saying, Queen Victoria, as I used to call you in Stepney, when you were the chair of my ward, and what a wonderful experience it was to have you chairing the meeting with a notable secretary whose name I will not mention, but you controlled that meeting so well. And that skill, I believe, set you up to be the chair of the council, and you held that meeting, you chaired that meeting so well. But in doing so, I want to say, as somebody who has been very proud and privileged to be involved in attending the ceremonial mayoral making ceremony for a number of years, more years than I look at my age. I know Councillor Jones is there, who was one of the first that I had the privilege of knowing as a female speaker or a mayor of the borough. I think you both, or yourself, you've done such a wonderful job. As my colleagues have said very passionately, in the times that we live in, when Black Lives Matter has become a symbol of all struggles across the globe, we were proud to have our own black sister running the chamber, being one of us, showing the groove that you have, the passion that you have to bring community together, to unite us, and to say to us that, you know, whatever background you come from, that struggle will lead you to victory. And on that note, I will say the people of Whitechapel, predominantly were British Bangladeshi, are proud to have you as a black sister, as their councillor, and let the community in Tower Hamlets be told that people always vote for the talent, and your talent shown in Stepney definitely, but in Whitechapel. So many congratulations on this amazing time. And all I will say is, whoever, and I just want to finish on this, our mayor, Mr. Biggs, John Biggs, has had this amazing task of, when he became the leader of this borough after the troubled time of the Lib Dems, beating Derek Beacon, appointed a Bangladeshi woman as his deputy. And on this note, has you as his mayor speaker, that it is his talent and showing his range of skills and embracing diversity. So that should be noted too. So congratulations to you. And I look forward to working with whoever the mayor decides to be the next speaker, because this is the most wonderful role and most cherished role in the council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ullah. Thank you, everyone, for your speeches and your recognition of Madam Speaker. I now will return the proceedings back to her. Thank you.
The first item of business for decision this evening is to elect a councillor to serve as Speaker of the Council. May I please have nominations for the position of Speaker of the Council for 2020-2021? Mayor Jambix.
Yeah, could I please nominate Councillor Abab Hossain? And I'd like to say a few words, but shall I do that now or later?
Can you unmute? We can hear him.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Did you hear? I nominated Councillor Abab Hossain.
Thank you. I heard that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Asma Isla?
Yes. Madam Speaker, I am Councillor. I would like to say that I want to say something else.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? I propose that the nomination is agreed unless there are any objections. Please, can members indicate if they object? I therefore please to declare that Councillor Mohammed Abab Hussein is duly elected to serve as Speaker of the London Borough of Tower Hamlets Council for 2020 to 2021, and I look forward to working with him over the year.
Can I say a few words, or is that in your procedure notice later on?
Yes, you can say.
Okay. We've got an echo.
There's too many microphones close to each other.
Right. Nope, still an echo. Well, I'll try and speak over the echo. So I've known Councillor Abab Hussein for some time, since long before he became a councillor, and he is a committed and active member of the community. His journey to Tower Hamlets and in Tower Hamlets is, in many ways, a very common one. Indeed, my ancestors coming to London through the East End a century or more ago.
I'd like to speak over the echo. So I've known Councillor Abab Hussein for some time.
I'm now hearing myself speaking a minute ago. Is that being remedied, or can I?
Yeah, continue. I think it's been remedied.
Okay. Yes, okay. So I've known Abab Hussein for some time, since before he became a councillor. I know him through the local political party, which we're both a member of, but I know him also through his community activism on the Bancroft estate in Bethnal Green, where he's lived for many years and brought up his family. He is in many ways an example of the journey that many people take to London, to the East End of London, in his case from Mirpur in Sylhet through Saudi Arabia, through the Netherlands, leaving Bangladesh in 1984, arriving in the UK in 1996. His kids, his first two kids, are now at university, both at Queen Mary, of which he must be incredibly proud, because it is one of the leading universities in the UK, and it's no accident, because it's in the East End, that it's one of the most diverse leading universities in the UK as well. So we're very proud of his family and his attainment. I guess the honour this evening, and I think any person who's made that journey and those achievements and been a good father and a good parent in our community should be proud, and there are many people in that position. But he is now being elevated to the position of the first citizen of Tower Hamlets, which is a significant position. He's going to be wearing the same gear as Victoria in a minute, and we should celebrate that and the symbol it shows of the journey and the leadership that people can show. I've known him because he's active in Bethnal Green as a citizen campaigner, both on local and borough-wide campaigns, and I know him also because he's someone who, in his bones and his heart, supports the values of equality and support for the underdog in our community. So I think he epitomises and shares and has the values of our community in his heart. He's active in Bethnal Green, obviously. He's been a very active member of the Baitul Aman Mosque, which of course has been rebuilt in the past few years and is now a splendid building, serving the people of Bethnal Green. He's been very active on the Bancroft estate with its tenants management organisation. I know as a councillor as well, through his work on licensing and in scrutiny and in the council more widely. He is a strong advocate for the people in Bethnal Green and will be a great tribute, I think, to the people of Tower Hamlets as well as our first citizen. So I have no hesitation in recommending to this council that he become our next speaker, and I'm very proud to be nominating him this evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Madam Speaker, can I say a few words, if that's okay?
Yeah.
Do you want to mute?
Okay.
Sorry. So before Okay, I'm hoping that there's no echo. Okay, before there is nominations, we want to run a short video because we are in a virtual committee meeting. So we'll take the seconder after we've run the short video. So could you please bear with us, members?
Please welcome the new Speaker of Tower Hamlets, Councillor Mohammed Hussain.
Good evening and assalamu alaikum. I'm so proud today. This is a very special moment for me, and I feel absolutely honored and privileged. I want to thank you all in advance for your cooperation for the first ever virtual full council meeting. I want to start by thanking Mayor John Biggs and members of the council for electing me as the Speaker of Tower Hamlets. I love Tower Hamlets. It is one of the most diverse boroughs with a rich cultural heritage. This is an important role, and as first citizen, I always carry out my duties and represent the borough and its people to the best of my ability. I also like to thank my colleague, Councillor Victoria Obaze, for all the wonderful work she has carried out on behalf of the borough over the past 17 months. I am grateful for the opportunity she gave me to support her and look forward to building on the work she has done. I understand the importance of encouraging and acknowledging achievement in our communities and promoting the council and its aims and values. And I will seek to do this over the coming months. I have asked my wife Rohima Begum and my good friends Muhammad Shanahor Ali and Abdul Latif to be my consort and will be accompanied by one of them from time to time whilst carrying out my official engagements. I have always been involved in the community, supporting a variety of activities and campaigns. Even whilst I was studying in college, a couple of initiatives I have actively contributed to, almost amongst other, are the Baitul Aman Mosque and Cultural Center and supporting food banks in Tower Hamlets. During these difficult times, it is even more important than ever that we work together to give help and support whether it is needed, and to make sure we stay in touch with each other so that people do not feel isolated. I have developed a comprehensive understanding of the needs of Tower Hamlets' different demographic and communities, and I try to do what I can to ensure that everyone's voice is heard. Throughout my career and political involvement, I have always felt it important to give back. Supporting local cultural, sports, and youth organization has always been a priority for me. So the charities that I support will reflect this. I will announce the charities in due course. I hope you will give me your support during the months ahead with my civic duties and fundraising. And in doing so, support the residents of this borough and enhance the opportunities available to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before you continue, could you please mute so there's no feedback? Could Councillor Asma Islam, who seconded this nomination, I understand she wishes to speak. So does Councillor Asma Islam wish to address the meeting?
Yeah, thank you, Asma. I just wanted to say a few words, if that's okay. I'm extremely honoured and happy to be able to second Councillor Abab Hussain, aka Abab Uncle, to be the Speaker of the Council. I share an extremely special relationship with Abab Uncle, and so have had the privilege of knowing Uncle for a while. He is someone who has spent all of his life in politics in many different forms, and I personally have seen the passion, commitment he has towards the borough and the community that we are all part of. I have personally had so much support and encouragement from him, and I know it's time we lent you to the borough as its first citizen. The world pandemic has in many ways brought out the best of our neighbours, communities, and as a nation, how we have come together to support the most vulnerable. As we face another wave and residents still faced with a lot of uncertainty, I know our new Speaker will do his utmost best to support our community here in Tower Hamlets and be the positive figure of bringing us all together and reassure our residents that we can and we will get through this. As Speaker, I know you will do everything in your capacity to convey our utmost gratitude and thanks to our nation's treasure, the NHS. You have already shown your generosity and love for the NHS and our very own Royal London Hospital. We all look forward to watching you continue this. I wish you all the best for the year ahead, and on behalf of the Labour Group, we will always be here to support you and your charities. Good luck, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Asma Islam. I will now return the proceedings back to Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Now, before we turn to our agenda for this evening, I would remind members that this meeting is being held in public and residents are looking on councillors to act in a professional and respectful manner and to show the borough in its best possible light. To that end, I would remind members to keep all this contribution brief and relevant to the debate. To speak through me, I have instructed officers to obtain a list of speakers from all members, and I intend to follow this list. Should the members wish to speak and they are not included on this list, please indicate your wish to do so in the meeting chat facility. I cannot guarantee that I will be able to accept your request. The second item of the business for decision this evening to elect councillor to serve as Deputy Speaker for the Council. May I please have a nominations for the position of Deputy Speaker of the Council for 2020 and 21, Mayor John Biggs.
Yes, could I nominate Councillor Jenith Rahman from Bromley North Ward to be the Deputy Speaker for the completion of this year? You want me to say a few words? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Whoa. Okay. So, I mean, I've known Jenith again for many years, and there'll be a formidable double act. I was looking earlier, we get from A to Z, Abab to Jenith. And Jenith is a mother and a grandmother in our borough. And
You've been muted, Mayor. Mayor, someone has muted you.
maybe I accidentally muted myself, but anyway. Right, so Jenith has been a community activist for many years in our borough. She's a mother and a grandmother. She lives in the Bromley North Ward, and we served for the last 2 years, getting feedback. Someone standing and I know she's been prominent in working on women's issues in particular, and on raising the profile of women in our community, which is, of course, a very proud movement in Bangladeshi politics as well. I was proud to meet her father, who was, of course, a prominent and published poet, and I know that Jenith would be very proud for him to be seeing her today if he was able to. And I just have no hesitation in backing her as a speaker for the next period in Tower Hamlets.
Is there a seconder, Councillor Dan Tomlinson?
Yes. Thank you, Speaker, and congratulations on your role. Councillor Zenith Rahman is a wonderful ward colleague of mine, and she's a friend of mine too. She has a heart of gold, and she has a deep commitment to our borough and to its people, serving them in the community, particularly in Bromley by Bow, since the early 1980s. She's the best of us, someone who spends her time serving and working with people from all backgrounds. She will make an excellent Deputy Speaker, I'm sure of it, and so I gladly second Mayor Biggs' nomination for Councillor Zenith Rahman to be our Deputy Speaker this year.
Are there any other nominations? I propose that the nomination is agreed unless there are any objections. I am pleased to declare that Councillor Janet Rahman is duly elected to serve as a Deputy Speaker of the London Borough of Tower Hamlets Council for 2020 and 21, and I look forward to working with her over the year. Agenda item 3 is apologies for absence. I have received apologies for absence from Councillor Sirazul Islam, Councillor Gabriela Salba Makalan. I have received apologies for lateness from Councillor Bale Whitehead. Are there any other apologies? Thank you. Agenda item 4 is declaration of disclosable pecuniary interest. Would any member who has a disclosable pecuniary interest on items on the agenda please indicate? Agenda item 5 is the minutes of the previous meeting. The draft unrestricted minutes of the council meeting held on 11th March 2020 have been circulated with the agenda. I propose that the minutes are agreed as a correct record unless there are any objection. Agenda item 6 is to receive announcement. I will now hand over to the Chief Executive, Will Turkley, who has some announcement to make.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations on your appointment. I would like to join the Council meeting in thanking staff, members, partner organisations and residents for their contributions to tackling COVID-19 in the Borough. I believe our response and work on recovery has been good, but there are very serious challenges ahead and the impact has already been severe. The Mayor has asked me to add to the announcements congratulations to Councillor Dan Tomlinson, who has got married since the last Council meeting, and I'm sure the whole Council would wish to congratulate Councillor Tomlinson and his family and his partner. James Thomas has joined us as our new Corporate Director for Children and Culture, and he's obviously very welcome at the Council. I have the sad duty of announcing two recent deaths among our staff. Mike Marcus, who worked as Social Care Senior Information Governance Officer, having joined the Council in 2013, and Jim Glover, Income Operational and Verification Team Manager, who has been with us in various capacities since 2014. Both sadly passed away recently. They will be profoundly missed, and we send our deep condolences to their family and friends. We are expecting to revisit the LGA peer review in November and indeed experience focused visits from Ofsted and a special educational needs and disabilities inspection in due course. We've won 2 awards recently from the Royal Town Planning Institute, the Best Local Authority Planning Team and commended for the local plan, as well as the Planning Practitioner Award for the Place Shaping Team. Congratulations are due to all of those involved. And finally, both the Municipal Journal and the Local Government Chronicle Awards are virtual this year, as indeed were our recent successful staff awards. On the 2nd and 28th of October, respectively, those events take place. We have 2 nominations shortlisted for the former and 6 for the latter. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Agenda item 7 is noting report on the Mayor's Cabinet and Executive appointments for 2020 and 21. Does Mayor John Biggs wish to speak on this item? You have 3 minutes.
I'm happy to formally propose the papers in front of you in the agenda for this meeting. I don't think I need to add any further detail.
Does any other member wish to speak? No. Yeah. I call upon Councillor Andrew Wood.
What are you doing about it? Where are we?
On the response to the night report.
No.
Oh no, we just have the...
Agenda item 7 is a noting report on the Mayor's Cabinet and Executive appointments for 2020 and 21. I call upon Councillor Andrew Wood. You have...
It's right, he's done that.
Sorry, I can't get it to work.
There you go. Councillor Wood, we can hear you.
Okay, so my system is still showing that I'm muted, so I'm just going to continue.
We can hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations to you and Councillor Tomlinson. It would be useful for us to see the job descriptions of the Cabinet members, especially given that you have appointed earlier this year a number of people with job shares, and it's a little bit unclear where the lines of responsibility lie. And also as another example, for example, that Councillor Rachel Blake is now responsible for capital delivery. I didn't know that until I read the Cabinet papers last week. So I think it'd be very useful for the wider public and for other people if we could have some more detail about the Cabinet member responsibilities, please.
Okay, noted.
Would you like me to respond, or I'm happy to respond?
Yes, you can.
And I apologise if that's not included within the paperwork for this meeting, but I'm very happy to share the job descriptions, which I think were presented to the last cabinet meeting. I think they have been presented to councillors through that forum, but I'll make sure that a copy is sent to you and that it's placed in the record of this council meeting.
I propose the recommendation in the report are noted unless there are any objection. Agenda item 8 is the report on the proportionality and the setting up to committees. The report asked members to note the review of proportionality and the allocation of seats on committees and panels for the municipal year 2020 and 21. To establish the committees set out for the municipal year 2020 and 21 and for place to be allocated on those committees. Please note that Overview and Scrutiny Committee should state 9 members, with 8 from the Labour Group. Councillor Kevin Brady, can you please introduce the report? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations from me on your new position. We're all very proud. I would like to present item 8, and it's as tabled. No need to speak on it.
Thank you. Does any members wish to speak? Okay, thank you. I propose the recommendation in the report are agreed unless there are any objections. Agenda item 9 is a report setting out nomination to committees of the council. The report asks member to appoint members and substitute members to the committees and subcommittees of the council and other bodies for the municipal year 2020 and 21. Appoint chairs to the committees. The list of group nominations has been published on the council's website and through the mod.gov app. As there are 2 nominations for each, vote will be needed to determine the chairs of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and the Audit Committee. Councillor Kevin Brady, can you please introduce the report? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, the report is as tabled.
Does any other member wish to speak on this item?
Councillor Peter Gold.
Yeah, I call upon Councillor Peter Gold.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. May I congratulate you on assuming your office. Gives me great pleasure this evening to propose that Councillor Andrew Wood be chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. This is no disrespect or criticism in any way, shape or form of the conduct or the way that Councillor King has conducted himself or indeed conducted the work of the committee in the last municipal year. However, it is my view, and that of many others in many different directions, that it will give voice of overview and scrutiny if an opposition member were there rather than a member from the majority party. An opposition member will be able to direct the committee, will be able to do the overview, and will be able to lead the committee in a particular way in scrutinising the work of the council, the mayor, and indeed the cabinet members on whatever they do. So it does get, as I say, I move formally, it gives me pleasure to propose Councillor Wood to chair the Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you. Okay, noted, Councillor Peter Gold. Full full council will now have to vote to decide the nominations of chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and the Audit Committee. The two nominations for chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committees are Councillor Andrew Wood and Councillor James King. The nominations for the chair of the Audit Committee are Councillor Andrew Wood and Councillor Bill Whitehead. For ace in the management of the virtual committee meeting, I will now ask the head of the Democratic Service, Matthew Manion, to conduct a roll call vote. This will be both of the nomination at the same time. You will be asked to give your nomination for the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny and the Audit Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will now conduct the vote. So, as set out, I will ask you to state your nominations for both committees at the same time. So we will work through the test. Okay. Mayor John Biggs. So you've got the chair of Overview and Scrutiny and the chair of Audit.
Of course, right. I'm voting for the two Labour candidates as proposed by Kevin Brady. So, yep.
Councillor Peter Golds.
I will be voting for an opposition voice, Councillor Andrew Wood.
Thank you. Councillor Farrokh Ahmed.
I'll be voting for James King.
Thank you very much. Don't forget to turn cameras on and off when you're speaking. Was that both and Councillor Val Whitehead for Audit or Councillor Wood for Audit? You're on mute at the moment, Councillor Ahmed.
Sorry, for both.
For both. Okay, thank you. I think I know what you mean. Councillor Rajiv Ahmed.
James King and Val Whitehead. Thank you.
Councillor Sabina Akhtar. She's waving at me violently from across the room, so I'll take that as the two Labour nominations. Councillor Safir Alam.
The two Labour nominations, please.
Thank you. Don't forget your cameras. Councillor Amina Ali.
Aye, both the Labour candidates, please.
Thank you. I know sometimes the camera takes a minute to come on and go off again. Councillor Sharamin.
James and Val, please.
Thank you. Councillor Asma Begum.
Councillor James King and Councillor Val Whitehead.
Thank you. Councillor Rachel Blake, have you joined us yet? I know you were going to be a bit late. Oh, yes, you have.
I'm here. I'm with James King for Overview and Scrutiny and Val Whitehead for Audit.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kevin Brady.
Thank you. I'll vote for the two Labour nominations as I proposed.
Councillor Mafida Bustin.
Thank you. I vote for Councillor King and Councillor Whitehead.
Councillor Keha Chowdhury.
Thank you. Please record my vote for both of the Labour candidate nominations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Shad Chowdhury.
Yeah, Labour candidate, please.
Councillor Deepadas.
For both Labour nominations.
Thank you very much. Councillor David Edgar.
Councillor King and Councillor Whitehead.
Councillor Mark Francis.
I support both Labour candidates.
Thank you. Councillor Atisham Pak.
Hi, let me follow the whip on this. I'll vote for Councillor King and Councillor Whitehead, please.
Thank you very much. Councillor Danny Hassel.
Councillor King and Councillor Whitehead, please.
Thank you. Councillor Asma Islam.
Councillor King and Councillor Whitehead, please.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cyril Islam's given apologies. Councillor Denise Jones.
Sorry, I didn't realise I was muted. Councillor King and Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you. Councillor Rabina Khan.
For an opposition member to scrutinise the council, will be voting for Councillor Andrew Wood and for the Audit Committee, Councillor Andrew Wood.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tariq Khan.
Councillor James King and Councillor Val Whitehead.
And then Councillor James King.
I'd vote for myself, Councillor James King and Val Whitehead.
Thank you very much. Councillor Salva McCullum's giving apologies. Councillor Eve McQuillan.
Sorry, can I vote for Councillor James King and Councillor Val Whitehead?
Thank you very much. Councillor Ismail.
Councillor Kings and Councillor Whitehead, please.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harrenmeer.
I'll abstain.
Abstain? Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Puramir.
Councillor James King and Councillor Val Whitehead. Thank you.
Councillor Abdul Mukir.
Hello, Matthew. I'm voting for Councillor King and Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you. Councillor Victoria Abazi. Okay, not there at the moment. Councillor Mohammed Papu.
Apologies, Andrew. I would like to park my vote with Councillor Val Whitehead and Councillor James King.
Thank you. Councillor Kirsten Perry.
Councillor James King and Val Whitehead.
Thank you. Councillor John Pearce.
Yeah, good evening. I'm going to vote for the most competent people, so that's Councillor King and Councillor Whitehead.
Councillor Lima Qureshi.
Councillor James King and Val Whitehead.
Thank you. Councillor Zenith Rahman.
I support his Labour board candidate, please.
Thank you. Councillor Candida Ronald.
James King and Val Whitehead. Thank you.
Councillor Dan Tomlinson.
James King and Val Whitehead.
Thank you. Councillor Helal Uddin.
I go for James King and Val Whitehead as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Abdal Ullah.
Matthew, having had the pleasure of serving in the ONS, I know how important that role is, and I think James Keelan will carry on doing an excellent job. And as Vice Chair of Audit, I have full faith in Val.
Thank you. Councillor Martin Usman.
James King for Overview Scrutiny Committee, Val Whitehead for Audit Committee.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bex-White.
Councillors King and Whitehead.
Thank you. Councillor Val Whitehead. May not be with us just yet. So, Councillor Andrew Woods.
I don't like voting for myself, but it has to be an opposition member in both roles.
Thank you. And then Speaker of the Council, Mohammed Hussain.
Thank you, Matthew. Yes, to Labour Council.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So I make that 38 for the Labour nominations and 3 for the Conservative group nominations and 1 abstention. So Val Whitehead and James King confirmed in those 2 posts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. I propose the recommendation in the report, and the remaining uncontested nominations are agreed unless there are any objection. Agenda item 10 is report setting out the updated calendar of council and committee meetings for 2020 and 21. The report asks member to note the revised calendar of meeting to May 2021. Does Councillor Kevin Brady wish to speak on this item? You will have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Speaker. Again, as tabled.
Does any other member wish to speak?
Yes.
I call upon Councillor Peter Gold.
I'm sorry, it was Councillor Wood indicated. I'm happy to defer to Councillor Wood.
Actually, Councillor Rabina Khan needs to go first, and I'll go second.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Rabina Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations on your role. Mr. Speaker, I am really very concerned about the fact that we are meeting after 6 months. But firstly, I would like to say thank you to all the staff and all the members who have facilitated and who have worked on the virtual meetings, the planning committee meetings and all the cabinet meetings. But I am deeply concerned that the last time we met as a council was on the 11th of March. There are very impending issues that need to be discussed, least of all, of course, COVID, Black Lives Matter, but importantly enough that today there was an emergency motion that was submitted to the council regarding the Uyghurs and the Hong Kong issue. These motions are important to be heard. Hence, I'm asking and requesting you, Mr. Speaker, to look into this matter to include in the future that we not only have a meeting in November, but an additional meeting on October. There are outstanding FOI inquiries, over 88 complaints to the council. People really need to be heard. They need to be able to voice their concerns to the council, and the full council gives that facility not just to members, but to the public as well. I hope, and I really, really hope that in the future we not only have the November meeting, but the October, and that members will be minded to debate the emergency motion on the Uyghur Muslims and the Hong Kong issue, which I submitted with Andrew Wood and Councillor Peter Goals, which was put together today. Thank you, and which I am seconding.
Thank you, Rabina Khan. Okay, they're noted, yeah? Now call upon Councillor Andrew Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So we've missed 2 council meetings, and a range of issues that we need to talk about just keep increasing and increasing. So I second what Councillor Rabina Khan just said, is that we do think we need an additional opportunity in a council meeting to debate some issues. I could provide you with a long list, but in particular sort of leasehold issues, antisocial behaviour issues, and in particular concern for me as being about what I would call the business model of Tower Hamlets, about how we're so dependent on income from Canary Wharf, and now their long-term future is potentially at threat from working from home. So a range of issues, and I think we need another council meeting to debate those in.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Gold.
It's not working now. Oh, here I am. Yeah, it's now working. I'm terribly sorry. My laptop is playing up a little bit.
Councillor Gold, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
It is the laptop slightly playing up. This is actually an extremely important motion here, procedurally and otherwise. The council is the democratic fulcrum of the borough. A great deal goes on that we really do need to come together to talk about. And I think it is extremely important that, having had no meeting effectively for 6 months, no full meeting where all 45 members of the council plus the mayor and principal officers can come together, that we do need to come together as soon as possible. And I would very much support, in view of the backlog of motions, the backlog of concerns of our citizens, the backlog of issues that the members of the public and indeed we as members of the council wish to have answers for, that it is a matter of urgency that we have a meeting in October as well as November. If we were to have a meeting in October, it will be bringing forward material. It'll be effectively a meeting that we should have had earlier on. Many people might well say, well, why would we have a meeting in October and November? And I would just say, look at the council diary when we have a cluster of meetings in January, February and potentially March next year. So I do believe it's a matter of absolute importance that we bring forward this meeting in October so that we can consider issues that are important to the borough.
Thank you. Okay, noted. Can I call Mayor John Biggs?
I'll be very brief, and I'm sure that Councillor Brady will come back as the whip on our group's position on this. But I simply to share with you that I found this period, as I'm sure everyone else has, as frustrating as I think the opposition members have. I've attended regular virtual London Council meetings, and it's been a common experience across London. We waited for a couple of months for the regulations to be issued about virtual meetings. Most councils did not hold their meetings until the autumn, as we have, and the technology took a while to settle down, but I have no problem with the principle that we should meet regularly and be accountable because we are a democracy. And what would normally happen is conversations through what's called the usual channels, where we talk, you would talk to Kevin, we will talk through the administration, and we will find the best way of holding ourselves accountable. There is no deviousness or desire to prevent scrutiny. We need to be out there and accountable for what we're doing. These virtual meetings are getting better, but they're not really a very satisfactory way of meeting people, but they're the best we've got. So I would say bear with us, and we want to be actively involved in our participatory democracy, and the council meeting is one of the ways of doing that. But I think Kevin has a formal response to what you're saying, but in no way would I want this meeting to end with people going away from the opposition benches and saying that there is some desire to stifle debate. We're here to be accountable. We're in a powerful position as the administration, and we want to be transparent and accountable for what we're doing. I haven't seen a massive attendance at overview and scrutiny. Obviously, I don't control overview and scrutiny, but I know the chair of ONS will reach out to opposition members who want to participate in those meetings. And as you know, I have my door open, always have had, to opposition members as well. So we want to be transparent and accountable. It's been frustrating for all of us, and we need to get to a position where we are openly holding meetings as best we can in the current crisis.
Thank you. I believe Councillor Kevin Brady wants to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Only to second what the Mayor has just said. I mean, there was certainly no attempt here to stop debate or stop proper democratic process. We do recognise that the Council has obviously encountered huge difficulty as a result of the COVID crisis. We are very open as a Labour group, and I'm sure John will say the same on behalf of the administration, to have discussions with all opposition councillors about the best way of moving forward to ensure that there is proper accountability, and we'll definitely defer to the monitoring officer to start those discussions about how best to both clear the backlog of business, etc., etc. But my suggestion is still obviously that we accept the committee calendar as it is, but we obviously work with the monitoring officer and other councillors to look at how best to move forward.
Thank you. No more name listed. I note the councillors' comments, and I will take this forward after the meeting with officers. I propose the recommendation in the report are agreed unless there are any objections. Agenda item 11 is report on the use of special urgency provisions of the Council Constitution. The report set out. I propose the recommendation in the report are agreed unless there are any objections. The report set out when the special urgency provision have been applied of executive key decisions. Does Mayor John Biggs wish to speak on this item? You will have 3 minutes.
I'll speak very briefly because this is quite a significant issue. We very, very rarely use these provisions, and I think this report follows on the back of the previous report and the discussion on it, because we've used our special urgency provisions in the period when we were unable to meet as a council or as a cabinet, initially we didn't have any cabinet meetings. We then started having those, and so the 9th of April decision was of that nature, as was the 5th of March decision. I believe on the 29th of July we had a serious problem with a contract, and we used the urgency procedure in that way, and we did so in consultation on both occasions with the chair of overview and scrutiny. In paragraph 3.8 of this report, the chair, which is quite a serious duty of his, agreed to waive the right of call-in on those issues because of the urgency of them. The first one was about sorting out our finances at the time of the COVID crisis, and the second was about responding on a rough sleepers initiative where staff were about to be made redundant given the lateness, as I understand it, of the Department of Community and Local Government's funding announcement. So I support the recommendations and urge the Council to agree them while recognising that they're pretty exceptional. And we've now got into a better way of doing business where we will use them less often and more sparingly than I would hope in the future. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Sorry for technical problems sometimes. Does any other member wish to speak? No. I propose the recommendation is the report are noted unless there are any objections. Agenda item 12 is report of the General Purposes Committee regarding the virtual committee meeting procedures. The report asks member to endorse the addendum to the Council Procedure Rules on virtual meetings agreed by the General Purposes Committee for inclusion in the Constitution. Does the Chair of the General Purposes Committee, Councillor Halaluddin, wish to speak on this item? You will have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and welcome and congratulations on your new position. I look forward to working with you. May I formally propose the recommendation as defined on the agenda and on the table on virtual and online council and committee meeting that need to be agreed tonight. Thank you so much for your cooperation. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Gold.
Thank you very much. I think we have actually a good news story here because a number of councils attempted right at the beginning to have full-scale virtual meetings, and without mentioning any names of any particular local authorities, a number of them collapsed into absolute chaos. We in Tower Hamlets approached the process very, very carefully, and the first thing we did was a licensing subcommittee, of which on the occasion I chaired. And I have to say, word had got around, and we had members of other local authorities. At least one provincial council was looking, and members of another London borough. And the way we had worked out how to conduct ourselves, how to conduct a meeting, has been followed by other local authorities. And this is an opportunity for us to say we worked properly and carefully, and on those occasions we got a really, really good solutions. And I have to say, I've watched Cabinet, I've watched other committee meetings, and Tower Hamlets is at the forefront of doing something properly. So I would thank my colleagues who have sat on these meetings and thank our officers who facilitated it.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak? Councillor Andrew Wood.
You're mute, Councillor Wood.
I call upon Councillor Andrew Wood.
I think somebody's actually muted Andrew from within here.
No.
Yeah, now it's okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Apologies for that. There did seem to be problems with the Microsoft Teams mute button. So the issue I've got is that in using Microsoft Teams, there's a chat function on the side. In a number of meetings, that's quite an important way for councillors to communicate with each other. But the chat isn't visible to the wider public and other participants. And there are some council meetings, planning and licensing in particular, where I think it may be inappropriate for members to be discussing things in chat which is not visible to the wider world. So I think one of the things we need to think about as a council, if we're going to keep using Microsoft Teams, is how the visibility of the chat function is managed to make sure that people don't get a perception that we're talking amongst ourselves in chat on the side and other people can't see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Noted. Officer are looking at it. No more name listed. I propose the recommendation in the report are agreed unless there are any objection. Agenda item 13 is to receive any petition. The special circumstances that the borough has been operating under over the last few months have resulted in a significant break between council meetings. Following discussion with the groups, I have therefore agreed to accept a number of further items which would not normally appear on the agenda at the annual council meeting. Given the number of items on the agenda, I must stress the importance in all cases of sticking to the time limits set, and in view of the circumstances of the meeting, I may shorten speaking times where I consider this necessary. I may also not follow the standard procedure rules to begin each section. I will be selecting speakers from the list I have been provided with. Agenda item 13 is to take the 3 petitions for presentation and 2 petitions for debate. Note that this is more than the 4 petitions that would normally be taken, but I have agreed to vary the procedure in the circumstances. The 3 petitions received for presentation to the meeting as set out on page 113 to 122 of the agenda. Participants are reminded that they must speak through me. When addressing the committee, you must switch your microphone on and may also switch on your camera at that point. You should keep your microphone switched off at all other times. If you experience any technical difficulties, please contact Benny in Democratic Service as soon as possible. Participants are also reminded that they must adhere to rules set out above. I must warn you that if you do not, I may remove you from the meeting. Petitioners are asked to leave the meeting after their items. You may continue to watch the meeting on the council website. I call on Muhammad Rakib to present the first petition regarding to locate and reinvest money from sale of state land. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, councillors and everyone watching. So I'm here presenting a petition on behalf of Tarling West Estate TRA in Shadwell. Tower Hamlets Council sold off part of our estate to Transport for London or Rail for London without consultation. We paid towards the upkeep of this land for years, and LBTH sold it for £130,000 with zero reinvested back into our estate. This occurred in 2011 and the process was started in 2008. To this day, no one has provided answers we saw, and since then LBTH has violated its own terms of sale and existing covenants to allow inappropriate planning permissions and use on the land. We want these permissions revoked while the land has finally been vacated and the money made available for reinvestment into our estate. The end of our street was pedestrianised without consulting us, and LBTH then went on to approve inappropriate planning permissions to use the land for business, inviting trespass onto our private estate road, and again without consulting us. the Mayor and others will be aware of the many problems we face on our estate due to businesses and trespass that we face on a regular basis. Later, it transpired that the wrong addresses were consulted by the planning department with regards to the planning permission. The green space land had existing covenants preventing the raising of permanent structures. Terms of the land sale restricted use of land to the station maintenance by Shadwell Overground. Yet LBTH planning deemed it appropriate to allow for building, and LBTH encouraged the trespassing by allowing a trading license for a business directly adjacent to flats. And now we're at a point where LBTH planning will not revoke the permissions, even now, nor make any notes for future reference. Both planning permissions and trading licenses were issued despite the covenants and the terms of sale forbidding it. The land has now finally been cleared after many years of dispute between the TRA and TFL. We're on a good standing with them at the moment. I'd like to thank Councillor Rabina Khan for putting us into contact with them via the GLA. LBTH have not, to date, not revoked the permissions they approved for inappropriate use that circumvented covenants, their own terms of sale, and did not consult the right addresses. Ask yourself what happens if you consult addresses that have no reason to care. We're working with TFL for an acceptable outcome. We can't demand that they give us back the land, but we can ensure that it isn't used outside the terms of the sale and existing covenants, even if LBTH won't. So what remains for LBTH is an explanation as to where £130,000 went and why it wasn't reinvested into the...
You have 30 seconds left.
Why it wasn't reinvested into the estate that paid towards upkeep. To Hamlets Council to revoke the planning permissions that have been a constant pain to TRA. Tell us where the money went and pay it directly to the TRA, because THH has washed their hands of this for many years now and they shouldn't get a penny out of this. Thank you.
Thank you. There are now 4 minutes for members to ask questions of the petitioners. Would the petitioner like to respond to the question I call upon? Councillor Rabina Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rakib, I just wanted to ask you, there have been a number of people, a number of meetings that has been held, a decision which was made to sell that land well before I became a councillor, which is noted in cabinet papers. What I would like to ask is, what is it for that estate that you would like to see that the council work with the TRA to make sure that the residents on the estate benefit from that?
Well, we've been going through this for many years now, Councillor, and obviously we've got some of the answers over those years as to why we weren't consulted, where the money went in terms of HRA or something like that. What we want to see now, I understand that this has gone through a number of different administrations and people can't answer questions on things that they don't know. We did ask about the consultation, and what we got from in 2017 from the Divisional Director from Property and Programs and Sutcliffe on an FOI was why we weren't consulted, and all we were told was cabinet reports. Obviously, this was a cabinet decision approved in 2009. The cabinet reports are generally publicly available. That is a response that we got. Now, you tell me if that's acceptable or not. However, what we want to see is that the money is reinvested into Tarling West, because we paid towards the upkeep of that land for over 50 years, as did LBTH, for the council tenant side of things. But if leaseholders are paying towards the upkeep of the land for many years, and we don't even deserve a consultation, and it's just sold from under us because the council marks it as surplus, that's unacceptable, and it's taken 10 years for us to get even this far. So that I would like to see that money returned to our estate. If we can't have the land back, fine. It now belongs to someone else. But that money should be made available to Tarling West Estate TRA, not to THH.
Thank you.
Hands of it.
Councillor Rachel Blake.
Hi there. I don't think we've actually met, but I came down to Tarling West to talk about this with one of the other TRA members several years ago, and did do quite a lot to make sure that the planning permission was enforced, and the actions necessary to make some of those early planning permissions to be held to the plans that they actually applied for were held to account. I just wanted to ask, you said that there hadn't been any communication with TfL. At the time, I remember linking people, raising it with TfL. I just wondered, and that would have been in about 2016. I wondered whether or not there had been any conversations with TfL
Question,
then.
please.
Yeah, the TRA is in direct contact with TfL now. That went through a GLA representative, Caroline Pigeon from the Lib Dems. Again, thanks to Rabina Khan for putting us into contact. We tried to go through Umesh Chesai and nothing happened. We tried to go through the Mayor of London's office, nothing happened. Look, that's a separate question because we're now directly in contact with TfL. We're trying to sort something out between ourselves. The question I'm asking the council is basically revoke those planning permissions because they were granted.
30 seconds.
They were granted in the wrong manner. They weren't consulted with the right addresses. There is inappropriate use and it violates the terms of sales and the covenants. That's what we're asking the council, and we're asking for the money to be reinvested back.
Thank you. Sorry, time is over. Okay, and now to conclude the discussion, does Mayor John Biggs wish to address the meeting in response to the petition? You have up to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank you, Mr. Akib, for coming on behalf of your estate and raising this matter. I visited the estate on 2 or 3 occasions and met with the Tenants Association. I've done so with Councillor Siraj al-Islam, who can't be here this evening for personal reasons, and my understanding is that the site was disposed. It was a period when hardly anyone in this meeting was a member of the council, to TfL specifically because they argued that they required the site for access for engineering works on the railway line as and when it needed maintaining, and not for them to build developments on the site. They then built this retail unit, and the planning function is different from the land ownership function of the council, and I'm pleased that the building has disappeared. You ask a question, and I hope that the site is restored. It still looks pretty tatty into more decent environmental state. You've asked what happened to the capital receipt, and the simple answer is that the receipt went into the housing revenue account, which is a revenue account for the whole of the housing stock in Tower Hamlets, and it wasn't earmarked for particular use on this estate. However, I'm aware from other meetings on the estate that there are a number of proposals for environmental works on the estate, and I undertake to take this back to Tower Hamlets Homes, and hopefully myself or Councillor Siraj al-Islam will come back and meet with you and with your local ward councillors to talk through how we can take forward works using, I would hope, the receipt. I mean, the Tarling West estate is an estate that I've known for well over 30 years now, and it is an estate which provides decent homes for people, but obviously could benefit from further environmental works because of the rather hard.
The second left.
Okay, and I would hope that we will be able to remedy this and come back to you and constructively deal with the issue. Thank you for bringing your petition.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That conclude the items. The petition stand referred to the corporate director, placed for a written response within 28 days. I understand that the petition for the second petition regarding food waste cycling is unable to present the petition of the council meeting. The petition therefore stand referred to the corporate director, placed for a written response within 28 days. I call on Mohammed Mohib to present the third petition regarding to the closure of Alford Road. You have 3 minutes. Mohammed Mohib, can you hear me?
Chair, I think we might be trying to get them to join. Do you want to take the next, see if the next petitioners are ready and we can swap? So go for page 47.
next item. The next item is the petition for debate. The two petitions for debate are on the subject of the following: the use of the road closer to stop wet running through Tower Hamlets, parking change to mini zones from 1st September. They have been brought to the Council for debate under the petition scheme as they contain over 2,000 signatures from the people who live, work, or study in Borough. Can I remind members to move any motion on this petition at the start of the debate? I call on Carlton Bolton to address the meeting on the first petition regarding road closure in Tower Hamlets. You have 3 minutes. Are you there? Bolton to address the meeting on the first petition regarding road closure in Tower Hamlets. You have 3 minutes.
Hello.
Yes, go on. Hello, you can start. Can you hear me? You are on mute. Can you unmute your button?
Okay, am I okay now?
Hello, you can start.
Okay, so sorry, Carlton's not available, so I'm doing my bit first. So my name is Anne Ambrose, and I live on the Minerva Estate, which is at the eastern end of Old Bethnal Green Road.
You are on mute. Can you unmute your button?
And in Liverpool Street's terms, we are in Scheme 4. Okay, so sorry, Carlton's not available, so I'm doing my bit first. So my name is Anne Ambrose. Sorry, I'm getting feedback. I don't know if I'm coming or going. But in any case, as some of my fellow Bethnal Green residents have already communicated...
Problems sometimes.
In Liverpool Street terms... I don't know what's going on now. So, some of the effects of our closures and those in Hackney are already having on Hackney, Cambridge Heath and Bethnal Green roads. I want to focus...
And sorry, have you got the webcast on?
Yeah.
Do you want to turn the webcast to mute?
So do I start again? Do I start again?
Yeah, start again.
Yeah. Okay, great. Second time round. So, my name is Anne Ambrose and I live on the Minerva Estate, which is at the eastern end of Old Bethnal Green Road, and in Liverpool Street's terms, we are in Scheme 4 of the current plans. As some of my fellow Bethnal Green residents have already communicated their views on the plans overall and the effects that our closures and those in Hackney are already having on Hackney, Cambridge Heath and Bethnal Green roads, I want to focus on what residents in my area have had to endure since the work started. The last leaflet we received was dated May, in which it stated that the work would start in June and be finished by early August. 16 weeks later, there is still no end in sight, as only 4 of the 7 planned closures are in place. While the closure of Old Bethnal Green Road has reduced the number of cars passing my estate, those speeding up and down the road has increased, so has the number of bikes and cyclists using the walkways to get around the barriers. By far the biggest effect of the closures have been on Winkley, North Canrobber and Maple Streets. Residents have quoted lately that it feels as though they are living on the M1. And on one of my visits, I saw a van mount the pavement and almost hit a lady who was watering her plants. The problem is not going to disappear if Teesdale Street is closed as planned. So if nothing else, I would urge that the decision to close it is reviewed as a matter of urgency and certainly before the works get there. Obviously, there is no turning back as far as Old Bethnal Green Road is concerned, but like many of my fellow residents, I would ask councils to stop any further works until the impact of what has already been implemented has been assessed and consider, in consultation with local residents, to amend the plans in such a way that the council achieves its aims and the streets and roads are better shared by all those who use them. Speech over.
Is it possible for me now?
Okay, quickly, Carlton Bolton, yeah.
Okay. All right. Firstly, I'd like to applaud the council for having a policy that seeks to make the lives better for all residents. Our proposals and the implementation of livable streets do nothing of the sort. The current proposals affect the most vulnerable and reward those well off disproportionately. The consultants are misguided and biased, and we believe their consultancy has a clear conflict of interest.
You have 30 seconds left.
The data, your system didn't let me in. It was putting me on hold, so I'm going to finish this speech. The data gathering in multiple locations has been underhand and is flawed. Thus, all your modelling data is corrupt and not fit for purpose. Comparing a city gateway borough such as ours to an outlying borough scheme is disingenuous. The dismissal of alternative schemes by the consultancy, which were put forward by residents, which we feel is because they do not deliver these schemes, is just not on. The consultancy's outreach and engagement of local people and businesses is dire, especially when you consider that almost £1 million has been spent in this regard.
Please be quiet.
Excuse me.
Thank you. Sorry, I am chairing the meeting. Thank you. There are now 4 minutes for question. Would the petitioners wish to respond to the question from members? Can I call Councillor Christian Perry?
Good evening. Thank you, Speaker. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
So thank you to Carlton Bolter and Anne Ambrose for bringing your petition to Council tonight. It's very much appreciated. I just wanted to reiterate what we're striving for with Livable Streets is about changing our built environment to encourage walking and cycling, address the illegal levels of air pollution which are negatively affecting children's health in our borough, enhance obviously social distancing in the pandemic and improve everybody's lives. I appreciate that change is difficult. I get that.
Councillor, ask your question, please.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure that we take everybody with us, and I want you to come to us and speak more, because there is a way that we can do this and we can pull it off so that everybody gets what they need in this. But we've got to improve the situation.
Thank you, Councillor Peter Gold.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The point we have here are questions to the petitioners as opposed to statements. And mine is to Carlton. Carlton, since the initial consultation went out, residents themselves have gone door to door with their own consultation exercise. Can you give us some indication of the response you had on your own consultation exercise as opposed to the consultation exercise conducted by the council, which cost many hundreds of thousands of pounds?
Yes, I would have approached that within the rest of my speech. I had a 1.5 minute speech, and I can't believe that I've not been allowed to give that speech. So, how I'd like to approach this answer is by giving the rest of my speech. So, the consultant's outreach and engagement of local people and businesses is dire, especially when you consider that almost £1 million has been spent in this regard. The council's own policy and guidelines recommend you follow the gunning principles when consulting, and I would recommend your councillors brush up in this area as soon as possible. Your own data shows that 50% of the issues you are trying to address is commuter traffic. Let's deal with that issue and see what happens to the other issues one at a time. Not everything at once is draconian to take that approach. The funding of these schemes are up in the air. We do not go forward and leave us with a half-baked idea in place because we run out of money that crucify other areas because we've only addressed one area. The whole borough has to be approached, not ward by ward. The schemes are not true Labour schemes. Labour does not divide like this normally. Labour does not inflict undemocratic policy, adding obstacles to the most vulnerable and least well off in our communities. John, you're a union man. You will understand we need to bring all the people along together. We have the opportunity now to do this if we change the consultants and we get a fully, truly independent team in to develop ideas that work with all residents, not just a few of them. And when we have gone and approached residents and businesses, they have not been asked, they have not been talked to. So I walked the length of Roman Road Market. I went into every one of those shops. Not one of them hardly knew anything about it. About 10% of them may have had some idea. Your consultancy is just going out and reaching to groups and bodies that say they speak for these people. They do not go door to door. And if they've spent £1 million on this consultant, I expect every person in the borough to have been approached individually. That amount of money, we did it, and we've gone out and we've seen them. But that amount of money should be such a bigger consultancy, not 2 meetings in a ward.
Thank you. Your time is over. Sorry, time is over. Now, Councillor Mark Francis. No, it's okay. Thank you. Okay, the time limit for the question has been reached. That is now 15 minutes for the debate, and I will look to call as many members as I can in the time available included on the list of speakers. All speeches are limited to 3 minutes, but I would ask members to keep their contribution brief. I intend to follow the list of speakers. I call upon Councillor Mark Francis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Congratulations on your appointment and those of Councillor Zenef Rahman as Deputy. Can I also add my condolences to all of the families of all of those people that have died during COVID. Thank you, Colton. Thank you, Anne, for bringing this petition. Thank you for taking the time to speak to residents. As you know, we've had some conversations ourselves, Colton, about this, and I think that what we've tried to do is to get to the bottom, to the heart of the concerns that you're raising. I want to say a little bit about that. Before I do, I think it's important that I just want to remind everybody about something that that we committed to in our 2018 manifesto. We said Tower Hamlets has many main arterial roads going through it, serving the strategic transport for London network. Through traffic should by and large stick to these main roads, but many of our residential neighbourhoods have seen huge increases in rat running, making them more dangerous, noisy and polluted. We'll create low traffic neighbourhoods, keeping through traffic to main roads and in any residential area where residents want them, with an ambition to have started on at least half the borough's neighbourhoods by 2022. So I really strongly support that proposition. I strongly support an attempt to tackle the problem of rat running, which isn't a new one. It's been going on for 50 years, and I think it is overdue that we address it. These are commuter traffic driving not through the main arterial routes, the A12, the A13, but driving through our residential neighbourhoods, and that is a problem. And it was right, I think, that we sought a solution and that we went out to consultation on a series of propositions. I think it was really important in that consultation that we asked people whether they supported a bus gate or not. I don't think that's the only issue. I was really pleased to see that there's a proposition in there about Roman Road Market area as well. But the bus gate is clearly the most important one in the Bow Liverpool Streets proposals. And I think that on reflecting on the responses that I've had back directly from constituents and especially from businesses in Roman Road, I think there is a problem with the proposition of a bus gate, at least a bus gate that affects directly residents. So I think at the start of this consultation, I was minded to consider there being a bus gate at peak hours that would affect everybody. But during the course of this, and in fact, you flagged this up to me, Colton, the Hammersmith and Fulham has introduced a scheme, its own low traffic neighbourhood scheme in Fulham, in SW6, which has exemptions for residents. And I think that is something Tower Hamlets now needs to give serious consideration to. It's something that's working well. Hammersmith and Fulham is a Labour borough too, despite what some people think. And it seems to be working really well. And I think we have to give serious consideration to that. And I hope that we can, in doing that, we can come up with a proposition that does exempt residents and local businesses from this bus gate enrolment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, I call upon Councillor Andrew Wood.
Thank you very much. I think nearly everybody I speak to on this subject actually agrees with the overall objectives. They all agree with the basic principles of what we're trying to deliver. They agree with the principle of trying to reduce rat running, especially for people who aren't from their local area. The problem is, how do we do it? How do we bring people with us? And how do we get the detail right? And I think that's where we've come into a bit of a problem. And I think the other problem as well is that this has become, unfortunately, a very divisive issue, and I don't think it needed to be. And I think part of the solution is to engage more with local people. I'm a firm believer that local people are the experts in their local area. They know better than anybody else what the issues are. And I think one of the problems with the process has been is that we haven't talked to them enough at the beginning of the process, and we're now running into problems. I think the second issue is that I get a sense that there's a kind of almost like a standard way of implementing these changes across the whole of Tower Hamlets, which is the road blockages, and I'm not sure that is the answer. I think in some areas, actually, bus gates are a really good idea, but it also depends on who's allowed through them. The idea that we, for example, that TfL allow taxis to drive on bus lanes, but we don't allow taxis to drive through bus gates, I find odd, because I've always viewed taxis as part of the transport solution. And I think we just need to sort of work better and engage local people on how these things work, and have a wider range of tools in the toolkit to deal with specific problems in specific areas, rather than trying to apply a kind of one-size-fits-all solution, which is nearly always road closures. And the problem with my particular area, and Councillor Perry's as well, is we have lots of construction traffic and construction, and that makes some of these issues really difficult to deal with because the layout of the roads changes on an almost daily basis. So I think we all agree on objectives. We just need to work together on how to deliver them and to make sure that we take as many people with us as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Tomlinson, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the petitioners for bringing this issue to full council today. I agree with lots of the points in your petition, actually, and as lead member with responsibility for the roads, I want to see more electric vehicle charging points, and I'm glad that we're going to be installing 150 more next year, or more than that, hopefully. I also want to make sure that every consultation that we carry out is as thorough and fair as possible, and that's why we have been carrying out a very detailed consultation process. In fact, almost 7,000 people have replied to the 4 livable streets consultations that we've carried out so far. That's lots of residents whose views we've taken into account, and we've spoken to hundreds more at various different stations and events across the borough. I also want us to implement changes that residents want to improve our borough in line with local opinion, and that's why ward councillors are closely involved in decision making, and that's why where issues have been raised, for example with some of our proposals in Bethnal Green, then we've listened and adapted our plans. And on road closures, let me say too that I want to limit the amount of road restrictions that we put on residents. I didn't come into politics to put road closures around Tower Hamlets, right? There are thousands of journeys made by residents in their cars each day, and many of them I know are necessary for work, to support family, or to travel further afield. My dad, he's a working class trade union man. He's a postman. He drives around his area for a living. My sister's a care worker who drives between appointments too. I understand that driving is not just a thing that people do for a laugh, but it's a very necessary thing for work and life for many. But lots of local journeys that are taken by car are very short. A third of them, we have estimated, are around 1 mile or less. That's a third of the car journeys in the borough. So if we closed roads to through traffic but implemented a resident permit system to allow all local residents to drive totally unimpeded, then this would certainly mean that even more short local journeys would take place. Local roads would be free of through traffic, which would be great, but we might expect that they start to fill up with more local residents and more local journeys. Car ownership would likely rise among local residents, putting pressure on our parking bays. Pollution might not go down as much as we'd like. Our health wouldn't improve as fewer people would take to walking and getting around our borough by other means. And crucially, the main roads that through traffic is diverted to would become even more congested as there'd be even more local journeys
You
made.
have 30 seconds left.
Basically, what I'm saying is that this isn't simple, and that every livable street scheme, like Andrew has said, will be different. It will be led by residents and councillors and taken through Cabinet for open and democratic decision. But let me say as I finish that whenever we make permanent changes to our roads, we will do so. Three more words. We will do so with extensive and open democratic.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Peter Golds.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This whole issue is very difficult. One thing we've picked up is that everybody here accepts that we have to do something about travel round our borough, and we have to do something about the livable streets. We have to do something about our livable streets. But I get the idea. I mean, I really do feel the idea is that somehow somebody produced the solution and then decided on the consultation. It's been done in the wrong direction. And this is exactly what we saw on the Wapping bus gate. Everybody who knows Wapping High Streets knows it's been a rat run. Everybody knows that people go along, see cars on the highway and dodge through Wapping to try and avoid on those morning traffic jams. But the bus gate has actually exacerbated it simply because of the issue. It's caused problems with local people. It's caused problems with taxis. What about people who've got handicapped children? What about people who've got handicapped adults that have taxi cars, that have taxis to take them to hospital appointments and schools, and suddenly they find their taxi can't go through where is the bus gate. They're going through the back streets of somewhere like Wapping. That is where the thing has gone wrong, and that is where you get the hostility in Wapping. And goodness gracious, that is where we've had the problem in Bethnal Green. I went up recently, I went up in the COVID. It's very, very difficult to talk to people, but it was absolutely obvious that residents were furious at how this scheme initially would have destroyed the Columbia Road Market, which has been a focal point of our borough for decades. Clearly somebody had not looked at what happens there on a Sunday. Somebody had drawn a line down a street. We had some of the nicer streets on the Jesus estate which had received the document, but the adjoining local authority estate or social housing had heard nothing. I met people who said to me, we didn't know anything about this till local residents knocked on their door with their own consultation exercise and asked them what they wanted. I would say to the Mayor and the administration is that there is a will throughout the borough to do something about our traffic. But to do that, we need to start by consulting the residents and not actually telling them what is to be done before we speak to them.
Councillor, we have 30 seconds.
Can't mute myself.
Thank you. Councillor Asma Islam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to start off by thanking Carlton and Anne for presenting tonight and everyone that's participated with this petition. On the sentiments of bringing everyone along, I'd like to raise some environmental points, add to the debate, and this is just not to disengage, but just to raise as part of the debate. Tower Hamlets has fifth highest pollution levels in London, and so we as a council have committed to declaring a climate emergency in 2019, and with that comes great responsibility. The Mayor and the Labour administration stood on a manifesto in 2018 that committed to implementing low traffic scheme and low traffic neighbourhoods, keeping through traffic to main roads in any residential area where residents want them. This is all part of helping to help us improve the air quality in the borough, amongst other benefits. We have seen how the pandemic has impacted BAME communities much harder than any other, and the Bangladeshi community has been hit badly by the pandemic. The areas that have high levels of air pollution are linked to areas of high population of BAME communities. We cannot ignore these findings, but must take into careful consideration how we protect our residents. Furthermore, with a borough where our children's lung capacity, which is 10% smaller due to the pollution, We have to put in place a scheme for our school streets, reducing traffic or closing school streets so that we can not only improve the air quality, but make it much safer to travel to and from school. We want to teach our next generation that we have taken every step possible within our capacity to help their future by improving the air around them and tackle this beast of an issue, which is the climate emergency.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, I call upon Councillor Rabina Khan. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I think most people would agree, and in fact all people would agree, that everybody wants a street where they can breathe fresh air, where they can have livable streets. Everybody wants fresh air. Everyone wants to live in an environment where it's clean, fresh. Nobody is disputing that. I know we've heard several times about the Labour Party's manifesto about tackling climate change, and we've had an emergency climate change motion as well. But unfortunately, for the Labour Party who are in power, we've had the second lowest in recycling rate in this borough in London, which is awful. We're at the lowest peak, so we actually haven't done anything about it. The problem with the livable streets is that whilst everybody has talked about engaging and listening to residents, you actually haven't listened and engaged with residents. Otherwise, you wouldn't have these petitioners come in here, and some of those petitioners are representing people who are very, very vulnerable. And I know this because I met a mother from Wapping who's got an autistic child and who's afraid of getting in the car because she may be stuck in the traffic for far too long. That's the kind of livable streets you are implementing. The Livable Streets project is a good idea. It's a noble idea. It's something that we have to do. But the way in which this council is implementing and forcing it...
You have 30 seconds.
Unacceptable. £1 million. £1 million on consulting on what? On what? Nothing. You have consulted nothing. You have not listened. Take the people with you in ensuring that the climate change debate, recycling and making sure Liverpool streets is not just for one community, but for all.
Sorry, time is over. Thank you, Councillor. The allocated time has finished. Does Mayor John Biggs, Cabinet Member for Environment and the public realm, wish to respond to the matter raised during the debate? You have 2 minutes.
I'm responding as the Mayor, but having consulted with my Cabinet members. And first of all, I really welcome this debate because it is clearly an issue that's bringing our democracy alive in Tower Hamlets. I'm very pleased to come after the last speaker because the content of her presentation was, I think, a little bit extreme. There has been a very detailed consultation on these issues, but of course it's not a referendum we're having, it's a consultation to understand people's concerns. I really welcome also that, as do my colleagues, that there is apparently a consensus about the overall objectives. And just to restate that, every year several hundred people die prematurely and thousands suffer poor health in our borough because of the poor air quality. And the main cause in our residential areas is pollution from cars. So although everyone agrees with the underlying principle, I think we also need to agree that no change is not really an option. We need people to stop using their cars for unnecessary journeys, and we need to recognise, however, that cars are an essential lifeline for lots of people for more necessary journeys. So we need to get into a balance. I think we all agree that we want to get rat runners out of our borough, but we need to be able to get about the borough to go about our normal business. And I think anyone who lives on a street that has rat running will want to see that rat running traffic disappearing, if at all possible. But it's a balancing act, and it's quite a difficult balancing act. The petition talks about technology, and Councillor Tomlinson, who's doing excellent work in this area, is talking about increasing the number of electric vehicle charging points, so that will help solve the problem. But when we talk to people in the borough, clearly you want a good quality of life for yourself and your kids.
You have 30 seconds left.
Want good health. But what I get out of this petition today and the representations is that there is still strong feeling. We need to look at what is being said by residents. We need not to go backwards because there has been a lot of support for these proposals, but we need to look at the ways in which people are being inconvenienced and in which we can achieve a win-win and not be divided by this issue. I mean, I feel passionately about this as well, and I think it's important for the future of our borough that we don't walk away, we don't become divided, but we grapple with and help resolve these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Your time is over. The petition stand referred to the Corporate Director, placed for written response within 28 days. I call on Zakir Hussain to present the second petition for debate regarding parking change to mini zones from 1st September. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Speaker for affording us the opportunity to bring this petition in front of this Council tonight. I would also like to congratulate the Speaker in his new role. Just to let you know, Mr. Speaker, I do have my own stopwatch, and by 3 minutes, I shall endeavour to stop. As for the petition, we, the residents of Tower Hamlets, would like to implore the Council to reconsider the recent changes to parking that has limited all-day parking to individual mini-zones. Firstly, we would like the Council with immediate effect to undertake a campaign of publicity, including social media, and writing to all permit holders with maps of the mini-zones to make clear the change, not just making a change to the Tower Hamlets Council website. Secondly, members of our working class communities have disproportionately been affected by COVID-19. Members who live in the borough in large intergenerational family networks, older members in these households being reliant on support from family members, whose only access to that help is via the family car. These parking restrictions will keep families further apart, increase loneliness and isolation, and at a time when family support is crucial to navigate through this deadly pandemic. I would like to bring to this Council's attention a report produced by Tower Hamlets Council themselves in 2016 titled Loneliness and Isolation in Older People, where it described the horrific effects of loneliness and isolation in Tower Hamlets. These latest parking changes will further increase the sufferings of these lonely and isolated elderly people. These people who have worked all their lives to contribute to this country are now, it seems, to be further isolated and neglected due to these restrictions. We, the residents of Tower Hamlets, would like the Council to publish with immediate effect the results of the equality and socio-economic impact assessments, which, according to the Council's own website, should have been carried out before these changes were implemented. Our petition has attracted more than 2,000 signatures, which I hope demonstrates to this Council the strength of extra revenue generated from the potential parking fines, and it would generate the extra revenues from the potential parking fines extracted from residents who live in an already poverty-stricken borough. We would like our councillors, who we have voted to represent us, to vote with their conscience, independent minds, and free will, and to seriously consider the impact of these parking restrictions on the most vulnerable in our society. Residents do feel that rapid changes are being made to Tower Hamlets during this pandemic to reduce the resistance from the people. As we debate here tonight, at this very moment, some people are fighting for their lives in hospital beds due to this pandemic. I ask, should the Council not be more sensitive to the current climate of fear and anxiety, rather than to exacerbate it with this latest parking restrictions? Thank you.
Okay, 1 minute. Please, I would like to strictly mention to the public not to use the chat function online. Thank you. Thank you. There are now 4 minutes for question. Would the petitioners like to respond to the questions? Councillor Victoria Obaze.
Okay. I would like to know from the petitioner what makes you feel that the parking is really affecting majority of the people, apart from the petition that everybody have signed. Is there any concrete evidence to show that there has been problems so far that this has been implemented?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Victoria. I think having 2,000 signatures within a space of 5 weeks, I think speaks volumes. And I think that's the answer that I will give you. That within 5 weeks, you had 2,000 people saying that they do not feel that these restrictions are fair. And we just have to use our logic here and think to ourselves, if we only have 3 hours now rather than all day, if I go to visit my elderly parents, I can only park there for 3 hours and then need to move it somewhere else. I might not be able to get a parking space close by. I might need to park it however many, 100 meters away, then come back to my parents. Now, other people will be going through the same thing as well. Now, this start and stop, and there's no guarantee that after I move my car, I'll find a space again. So what do? Do I abandon my parents? Do I not see them again? This is the challenge that we will be facing if this comes in. And also, I would like to just add the way it's been done without consultation, I think is very unfair. I mean, we live in a democratic, from what I've been told, a democratic country. And the guiding principles are something, I believe, that the councillors are aware of. And just for the record, I just want to say the guiding principles, I believe, are that. Number one, consultation must take place when the proposal is still at a formative stage. Has that happened? Sufficient reason must be put forward for the proposal to allow for intelligent consideration and response. Has that happened? Adequate time, key. Adequate time must be given for consideration and response. Has that happened? The product of consultation must be conscientiously taken into account. What product and what consultation is what I ask this council tonight.
Thank you. I now call Councillor Harun Mia. Hello. Councillor Harun Mia. Okay, now I call Councillor Mekulen.
Oh, sorry, I'm here.
Okay, go on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations on your new role. Obviously, I agree totally with the petitioner, Mr. Zakir Hussain, for bringing this very important petition. I totally support that. You see, I have many friends and relatives who I need to visit and who I've seen visiting their families. Please, they need cars.
Ask that question, please.
My question is, Mr. Zakir Hussain, is it possible that you have done a lot of work? I'm grateful for that. In terms of businesses, how will that affect, the new rules? How will that affect them? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Harun Mia. It's a very pertinent question here, and I think this is where I feel that sometimes my faith in the councillors increases. So thank you for that question. So same again, if you can't park, you can't go and shop. If you can't go and shop, local businesses lose out. Saturday, Sundays particularly.
You have 30 seconds left.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
It will be affecting the local businesses. If you can't park, you can't shop. And a lot of us, rice bags, onion bags, and other things, heavy things. If you can't park for the amount of time you need to go and shop, then you won't be going to these places. The local businesses would lose out. And then slowly they'll have to pack shop and go to Dagenham, like so many other Bangladeshis and other BAME community people have done.
Thank you. Your time is over. Thank you.
Thank you.
The time limit for the question has been reached. There is now 15 minutes for the debate, and I will look to call as many members as I can in the time available. All the speeches are limited to 3 minutes, but I would ask members to keep their contribution brief. I intend to follow the list of speakers. However, if any members who is not included on this list wishes to speak, please indicate now. I now have a copy of motion from Councillor Andrew Wood. Is there a seconder? Please indicate.
Yes. I'll second.
Please, can Councillor formally move their motion during your speeches?
Can I go ahead then? So I'll start if you don't mind, since I was involved in the original petition. So just to focus minds, tomorrow morning, 1st of October, fixed penalty notices will start to be issued, and this has been another change, because obviously in the first month this was only a warning that was issued to residents. So to give you some background, sort of in late July, somebody has said the parking rules are changing. I didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't remember seeing anything in Cabinet or the forward plan. And they then sent me a link to the council website, and I read it. And to be completely honest, I didn't actually understand what was changing. And it took me 15 minutes to work out what the impact of this change was. And basically we had just about 5 weeks to go before the change was going into place. But it wasn't on any cabinet agenda. It wasn't an overview and scrutiny. So what do we do? There was then a change.org petition that was raised, which actually, as at last weekend, raised 6,099 signatures. Concerned that it might not go onto the council system. Other people, including myself, also put a petition on the council website, which generated 2,121 signatures. Obviously, a little bit of duplication between those two. And that all happened very quickly. And the main issue that we have is, this wasn't consulted on. So the gunning principles don't apply if you don't even bother to consult people. So during the month of July and August, there was a lot of uncertainty. What does this mean? People had questions. How do we ask questions? And there's a complete lack of clarity. And we as councillors didn't even get a briefing report until 5 days before go live. And therefore we felt we had to raise a petition as the only option to get this in front of the council to debate it properly. Because I've been a councillor for more than 6 years now. We've never debated parking issues in 6 years. We've talked about popular hardcore increasing, but not actually how this all works. And I strongly feel, a little bit like the previous discussion, livable streets, is we can't do things in isolation. We need to look at the whole thing together and make changes. And some of the things I think we need to talk about actually will make parking more difficult for some people. But those are the kind of issues that I think we need to debate. So what the motion I've submitted is asking for is to stop this, not to let it go forward. If the council doesn't agree with that, at least to put it on hold by not issuing fixed penalty notices tomorrow until the COVID situation improves, because people do need to visit family have to be careful about how they do that. Or that we do an equality impact assessment to understand the impact of this, because I put in the motion, I think this will impact between 50 and 100,000 people. But I can't be sure whether those numbers are right or not, because I don't think we've done the detailed work on this particular issue. And then the third thing that's in the motion is then basically a suggested list of things to debate when it comes to parking, ranging from, car-free developments, which I understand the council are already looking at. But there's a range of other things that I think we need to be talking about. And tonight is a start, but I think the motion is basically asking for a proper debate on parking issues, that we look at this collectively, rather than just making these incremental changes without consultation, which just create confusion within the community, because that was the initial response from many people. They just didn't understand.
Yeah, 30 seconds left.
So therefore, I would therefore very much ask my fellow councillors in a non-partisan way to agree to this motion, and let's debate these issues properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rabina Khan, you have seconded. Do you wish to speak?
I formally second the motion, and I reserve the right to speak later in the motion.
Councillor.
Mr. Speaker, if I may make a procedural point on this motion, if that's allowed.
Okay.
I understand that the Mayor has indicated he might want to speak on this himself, but I believe he has indicated that the motion comments on the fact that it hasn't gone to Cabinet. I believe the Mayor is willing to take this issue to Cabinet. So I'd suggest that the Council, using Procedural Rule 12.1d, we refer this up to the Cabinet and then move from there, rather than take it as a motion in full Council now.
Thank you. Noted. Now, Councillor Ib Mekulan.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations on being elected as Speaker of the Council. I'm going to raise the issue that I wanted to ask Mr. Hussain, but didn't get time to, which is that consistently residents in Bethnal Green complain that they can't find parking spaces near their homes because people come and park at Bethnal Green Tube, then get on the tube and then are at work in the city or in the centre of London all day because they're parking at the nearest tube into the city. I think that we've talked a lot about fairness in parking, and I wanted to raise that issue because it's a real issue that affects my ward, and I understand that it affects people who live around Mile End Tube as well, that it isn't fair that people aren't able to park near their homes because people are using it as a convenient way to commute. For the people who are commuting, absolutely we need to make sure that vulnerable people have access to parking, but for the people who are commuting to get into work in a more convenient way, those people really should be taking the bus or finding another way to get onto the tube network rather than clogging the streets and green around the tube. Because people are using it as a convenient way to commute. For the people who are commuting, absolutely we need to make sure that vulnerable people have access to parking, but for the people who are commuting to get into work in a more convenient way, those people really should be taking the bus or finding another way to get onto the tube network rather than clogging the streets. Because people are using it as a convenient way to commute. People who are commuting.
Councillor Bex-White, can you hear me?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations on your appointment. The role of a ward councillor is representation. In my ward, I frequently meet residents who genuinely need to drive in order to make a living and to care for their families. These include taxi and minicab drivers, carers who work in multiple locations around the borough, and people employed in the construction industry. While I don't drive myself, I recognise that this is in part because of the privilege I have in working close to home and in being in reasonable health. On the other hand, I regularly meet residents with disabilities who feel that the local area has become less safe for them with a significant increase in private car use. I'm regularly spoken to by parents and carers who fear for their children's safety on our roads. And indeed, this council has been addressed by eloquent and passionate children from Arnhem Wharf Primary School recently, whose simple request is fewer cars near their school. Without wanting to bore you all with my childhood memories, the days of playing on the road on the Teviot estate are long gone as private car ownership has rocketed. As a representative, I need to bear in mind that 70% of Tower Hamlets residents don't have access to a private car. For some years now, we've been at a place where there is not enough space on our roads for everyone who wants a car to be able to park it in a public space. And this means that those who need cars are sometimes in conflict with those who want cars. Of course, we might all differ on where the line should be drawn between need and want, and that's what makes this debate so heated. My colleagues in the Labour Party are resolved to work to make life easier for those who truly need to drive, and I believe that this policy does that, especially when taken alongside our Livable Neighbourhoods programme, which aims to make it easier and more pleasant for people to travel around the borough in active ways, which should help some of those who don't need to drive to give up their cars, making more space for those of our residents who do need to drive. On a point of information, if the petitioners are concerned about being able to visit and care for elderly relatives, they'll be pleased to hear that visitors' parking permits are free to carers and people aged over 60. So I hope they'll be reassured that this won't have the feared effect. I welcome this debate, and no doubt we are going to have more of them, as this is a key issue for us as we seek to balance the needs and views of our diverse population. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, Zakir Hussain, the petitioner, you can listen to the part of the, however, you can not speak. Please do not disturb this meeting. Thank you. Now, can I call Councillor Motinud Jaman?
Mr. Speaker, can I first of all start by congratulating you on your new role? I would like to just say that I welcome the Mayor's suggestion to take that back and discuss this further in the Cabinet. I would also like to, while I understand the rationale behind the point about people being able to park near their home, particularly in Mile End in some areas where you have travellers parking and going into central London, I think I want to just share some of the points that some local residents have raised with me, and I want to make sure that we all take those into consideration. The point about the businesses in the borough, people travel, if you want to make sure local businesses in Roman Road, Bethnal Green, across the borough succeed, people, obviously while public transport is what we should encourage, they need to be able to go from one area to another and shop. And otherwise, people like me might choose going to Beckton and where I could park my car and do my shopping. We need to make sure that they are not left to lose in this difficult time with COVID, already difficult with footfall. We also know that with COVID, a lot of people are in self-isolating. Families need to support families. And particularly in the ME community, the family network is the support. Family network is the carer. Because while they don't want other people to care for their parents, children tend to care for their parents. It helps the burden on social care. So it's really important that we take those into consideration. We hope that we look at the parking permit. I know in some areas it's a smaller zone. We need to make sure that we are not, if there's only 500 parking permits per parking spaces, we don't want 1,000 cars given that. So we just need to look at the boundaries, and I'm sure the lead member for that area has taken due consideration on those. But we just need to make sure that we're not setting something up that ends up being a problem for local residents. I don't think that's the intention by this. It's a good intention in terms of making sure local people are able to find parking. And most importantly, I did raise this once, which is the minicab drivers, when they work all day, all night, Mr. Speaker, when they come back, but when they come back, they need to be able to find parking spaces. It's not fair. Just need to make sure that what we're doing with good intention, we're not really leading to making sure that local residents suffer. That's all.
Thank you. Can I call Councillor Dan Tomlinson, please?
Thank you, Speaker, and thanks to the petitioners for bringing this petition this evening to Council. I think that it's clearly an issue that has raised a lot of concerns among residents. It is, though, a relatively minor change that residents will still be able to park for 3 hours in any other part of the borough. That's something that doesn't happen in almost any other local authority in London. So we've still got that to help residents who need to go and visit family or make necessary journeys into other parts of the borough. And just to clear up that we did send a map to every single resident. We wrote to every resident twice as part of this, every resident that has a parking permit. But myself and the Mayor, we do understand the strength of feeling that's been expressed this evening. And it's clear that this change does matter to a lot of people. So as the Mayor has already indicated by Kevin, and I think he will in his formal response soon to the petition, probably after me, we will be bringing this now to Cabinet for a full and open decision-making process so that everyone can have confidence that they've been able to feed in before the change is made. But just as Eve was describing earlier, this change should make it easier for residents to park outside their house who live in areas where lots of people drive to them. And that is just a really odd thing that we have this situation in our borough where if you happen to live near a tube station, it's impossible to park near your house because people drive from one corner of the main zone to the other. So this change will get rid of that, and it should make it easier for people to park in their own mini zone and near their house in difficult bits of the borough. And just to say finally, which I'll say again when we get to Cabinet as well, we're really open to looking at making sure that we can make these changes work. So if in particular areas, councillors or residents do have issues on the boundary and we need to look at changing the boundary streets, then that's something we can do. But to conclude, thank you for bringing the petition. I understand the strength of feeling and I look forward to discussing this more at Cabinet, and thank you for everyone's contributions as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, I call Councillor Rabina Khan.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, and thank you for remembering that I reserve the right to speak at a later time in the motion. I've actually listened very carefully to some of the speakers from the Labour group, and what concerns me is that you are actually reflecting exactly what the petitioner has come here to tell you about the strength of feeling, about carers, about businesses, all the things the reasons why on change.org over 6,000 people have signed. Now, the problem here is that you have not consulted with the residents. That is why we have the petitioners here. That is why we've just had all the petitioners from the previous Liverpool Streets project. The problem with this council is the question that needs to be asked.
Sorry, Councillor, time is left.
The minute is more consultation.
1 minute is left. Thank you. Now, can I call the allocated time has finished. Does the Mayor John Biggs, to respond the matters raised during the debate? You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank Councillor Tomlinson for all the work he's doing on this, and I apologise that I'm exercising the right to respond on this, but obviously it's under our current arrangements as Mayor. This is something that will, as I've said, come to our Cabinet, and we need to be concerned about it. I could also say, by the way, that I attend meetings across London, the UK, virtually and in person, meeting other councillors, and parking is always one of the most difficult issues. Wherever you are, in the middle of Cornwall, in the middle of London, it's always a challenge. That doesn't mean, however, you shouldn't do anything. So can I thank people for the petition? I know there's been a lot of interest and debate, and I welcome the opportunity of discussing it here at the Council. It's sort of brought the Council to life again, and again, we need to try and deal with this in a way that doesn't divide us and is not used by opportunists to try to create some of the silly politics we've had in the past in Tower Hamlets. We've got to be very clear, though, that Tower Hamlets is a really densely populated area with a rapidly increasing population, more cars than ever, and ever busier roads. And it's really good that more of our community are reaching levels of prosperity that allow them the freedom of owning a car. But what it has meant is that while we have one of the lowest levels of car ownership in the country, still, we have massive levels of congestion, and our roads are terrible, and we have life-limiting air quality problems in the borough. We have people's lives affected and shortened by the congestion and the behaviour of vehicles. Every individual can get away with it, but collectively we need to find a way of working together, a bit like dealing with the COVID crisis. We have to strike a balance between the different needs of residents to protect our quality of life while allowing everyone to go about their business in the best possible way. And even the petitioners, I think, are at risk of being confused. The change says that from the 1st of September, as has been said already, you're only able to park all day with a resident permit in your mini zone, and that's where you live. And the purpose of a resident parking permit is in the name. It's a permit to park where you live. It's not meant to be a license to go wherever you want. And indeed, in most London boroughs, they have a more restrictive regime. In fact, ours is the most permissive. You'll also be able to park for up to 3 hours in any other zone in the borough. And in most boroughs, you're not allowed to park outside of your existing zone. And it is political, but we should note that the parking control out in town is less than in many other boroughs, and there's lack of freedom in other boroughs, which is far greater than ours. So we're one of the most permissive, and we will continue to be. Everyone was written to, and there are advantages and disadvantages, as people have spelt out already. But I'm very clear that there will be some impact, and parking pressure may be greater in some areas, but I think it will be...
You have 30 seconds.
Others. So to finish, as has been highlighted already, I fully recognise, and my councillor colleagues do, I think, as well, the concerns in the petition. And while I don't think we need to spend years carrying out an exhaustive review of every one of our policies, I do hear the concerns which are being raised, and that's why we're taking it to the Cabinet, and I'm committing to pause the current proposal until the full report has been brought to the Cabinet for final decision, which means that there won't be any penalty notices issued from the 1st of October until this matter is being resolved. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you. I will now hand over to Matthew Manihan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Right, so there's been a procedural motion there to alter this motion to take it to Cabinet. Just if the Speaker can mute. So I'm not getting feedback. Thank you. Councillor Wood, as the mover of the original motion, would you be happy to accept that?
Yes, I'd be happy to accept that it goes to Cabinet, because one of the points of the petition was for this to go through a formal process.
Okay, so if the Labour Group have proposed that and the Conservative Group potentially are happy, then unless anyone says otherwise now, I'll take that as read and avoid a need for a roll call vote. We'll just give them 5 seconds to object if they wish to.
Agreed.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Speaker.
Petitions referred to the corporate director, please for a written response within 28 days. I understand that Councillor Peter Goals wishes to speak at this point to propose a procedural change. Is there a seconder of this proposal?
Sorry, which change are we talking about? Sorry, which one?
Councillor Godds, I think you were proposing an urgent motion.
Yes. Yes, this is the motion. Sorry, thank you very much. Can you hear me and see me?
Yeah.
Thank you. This is the motion which has been circulated to do with the situation of the Uyghur people in China. In my view, something, although we normally do not feel that the Council should be taking up foreign affairs, this is something that truly does concern the people of this borough. We have the possibility, and I understand a planning application is in line for the Chinese embassy to come here. I make no comment on that. I'm not going to talk of the deliberations of a planning committee meeting well in advance or even before a consultation takes place. But this is an issue of real humanity here. And I would say that we have in the Canary Wharf ward the largest concentration of Chinese residents identifiable in any single ward in London. You can actually look on the Office of Census figures for that. It's an extraordinary number. Many of them, of course, connected with the businesses in the Canary Wharf complex, the Bank of China, etc., etc. But I'm also concerned at the humanitarian horrors of which we've heard, of people taken from their homes for no other purpose than the fact they wish to practice the religion that is their religion, taken from their homes to be re-educated. People of the Muslim faith being force-fed pork, in my view, utterly...
Councillor, you have to quit, please.
I wish to brief that this motion comes before the Council tonight and we consider it and hopefully approve it.
Hear, hear.
Is there a seconder for this proposal?
Yes, there is, Mr. Speaker. I would like to second this. And I'm really pleased that I've been working with the group on this.
And the Mayor?
They're obviously flirting with everyone because we're very happy to second this as well. It does raise an important issue.
It's really disgraceful to say flirting in this.
I can't see in any way sense that that's a disgraceful comment.
Oh, God.
And now, have I got
I'm taking advice from the monitoring officer.
I have a feeling that means that we have two seconders, which we have done before at meetings.
Yeah. Have we got a copy of it again? Because I keep getting all my paperwork in front of me. I haven't got a copy.
Councillors, could you please mute yourselves because there's we can hear people talking and Mr. Speaker will address the chamber.
I will now pause that to take advice from the officer. Thank you. Having taken advice from the monitoring officer and considered the request, I do not consider that this matter is urgent enough to accept for this meeting. Members are welcome to present this matter at the next meeting should they wish. I will now proceed with the agenda as set out. Agenda item 14 is the Mayor's report. The written report has been published. I have decided to allow the Mayor and the leader of the Conservative group additional time to address the meeting as set out in the agenda. The Mayor may address the meeting for 8 minutes and the leader of the opposition may address the meeting for 4 minutes. I call upon the Mayor John Biggs to give his report to Council. You have 8 minutes.
Checking I'm not muted. Right. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's good to see you all again and be in a council meeting. This is one of the reasons we're here, to grapple with and deal with difficult issues. And as we've already said, since we last met in March, COVID-19 has dramatically changed lives for each and every one of us in the borough. And we've already reflected on the pain and suffering it's caused, and we need to continue to be very sombre in reflecting on that. Everyone's been affected, but obviously some far more than others. We've all had to get used to new ways of working, such as this meeting, a trivial matter, I guess, but for other people, far more difficult changes, and new restrictions and changes to our normal daily lives, which is, this time last year, we would have thought would be unimaginable. And as we have said earlier, our thoughts are with those who suffered so much, and we're grateful to those who are working on the front line, including our local government officers, who have made great sacrifices and shown their commitment time and again to our community. But the crisis has also, I think, brought out the best across our wider community. So I want to thank the thousands of people in our community who've come together to support each other, donated their time or their money or their expertise to help others, whether it's residents checking on the neighbours or working with community groups or working with organised food delivery networks, with restaurants and with volunteers, or just people going about their daily lives and following the rules. Can I thank everyone who's doing the right thing? And so while this year has been really difficult for everyone, the East End spirit of community and resilience, which I think we're known for, has been a lifeline to many people, and long may it continue. Now we move on to slightly more bad news, which is despite some respite over the summer, we need to accept now the situation is once again worsening. As a second rise in the infection is hitting us, we must redouble our resolve and take all steps necessary to limit the spread of the virus in order to protect those most at risk. I'm meeting with the Mayor of London tomorrow with a number of other East London boroughs because we are a real hotspot in London. We need to work out what we can do to protect people. We need to remember that while the virus is a threat to everyone, we know it has a disproportionate impact on older and medically vulnerable residents as well as on some BAME groups. So there's no escaping it. That means that Tower Hamlets is at a really great risk, and every one of us must do our best to protect our community and stop the virus from spreading. And that means us as leaders standing up for those messages about the three things: the distance, the face coverings, the hand washing, making sure that we create that space which stops the virus from spreading. With that in mind, we need to take further action, and I think we need to be hearing in the next few days more formal steps, but I would urge that everyone in the borough follows the rules at present, and the advice is that we need to up the ante. We need to think very carefully before mixing with other households. We need to ensure that people are wearing their face coverings whenever there's a risk of transmission. And this really is a matter of life and death, and we need to act urgently. After a long period in which there weren't fatalities, they are beginning to return to us in East London. It's a very dangerous moment. So the next few months are going to be very challenging. Without a vaccine or more effective treatment, our primary weapon is about behaviour. So it's about measures to curb the spread of the virus, and they will only work if people follow them. So I know we're asking a lot of the community, and people need to know that we stand alongside them to support them at this time. We've been giving a lot of thought on this issue. I want to thank in particular Councillor Rachel Blake, who's leading on the Adults and Health Brief, and together we've been doing a lot of work on our COVID support, but also the economic support we've been providing to people. So over the last few months, we've provided over £182 million in grants to provide a lifeline to local businesses, over £1 million in additional funding to our voluntary sector, plus supporting kind. We provide homes for 150 rough sleepers and those in insecure housing. And we've introduced new school streets and temporary measures to add social distancing. That's very topical, obviously, this evening. And so alongside the Mayor of London, we're fighting for the world-beating test and trace programme we were promised by the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. We already have a mobile testing unit at Billingsgate, which has been operating for some time for appointments only. We have a second government-run testing centre in Watney Market. And in the next few days or next week or so, we're hoping a third testing centre will happen, possibly in the Mile End area, which is about keeping our community safe. It's not about creating vulnerabilities. It's about keeping our community safe and making people have access to tests. The pandemic's also left a massive economic scar so far in our borough, with over 47,000 local people who were still furloughed in August, and many of them will be worried about the prospect of future unemployment. Universal credit claims have increased by over 50%, and that's just the start. The Work Path programme is doing some work. Government programmes are stepping in, but we're working across London to up the ante to ensure that we get adequate resources if we can, because we need to invest to avoid losing the next generation of young people and to avoid people's lives being blighted by unemployment and by financial loss and hardship they will face. Very, very serious time. After the decade of Tory austerity, COVID-19 has hit further hard on the council's finances, and so the government did tell us that we should spend whatever it took to tackle the virus, but like all other councils, we found that the additional funding hasn't been adequate for that. So we're going to face painful spending decisions as well in the coming months and in our budget to come. But we need to be clear about what drives us and what our values are in that. And the administration that I lead will continue to be on the side of residents. And while difficult decisions will be ahead, our absolute priority is to protect the most vulnerable and continue on the amazing journey of progress and the foundations of support we've offered residents and will continue to do so. So there's no doubt that this will cost the council a significant amount, but we're not going to abandon those who need our support most. While the Tories may think it is reasonable to cut support to the poorest, this council will not turn our backs on you. There'll be more on that in the coming months as we talk about our budget proposals. While the pandemic's been our primary focus, it hasn't stopped the council making progress in a lot of other areas. So tomorrow I'm visiting 2 of our new council housing schemes, Loxley and Baroness, 36 new homes for local residents, 2 of many schemes across our estates in the borough. We've opened new play equipment in Bartlett Park, in Poplar, Leith Gardens in Bethnal Green, and with new gym equipment in Shadwell Basin on the way. The new installations form part of the council's £10 million parks capital investment programme, making real progress on that. Bartlett Park, by the way, looks pretty good. I recommend you go and look at it. We challenged the government on Westbury Printworks, standing up for residents and demanding that developers pay their dues and contribute to local services rather than try and make a quick buck. And I welcome support across the chamber on that. We've adopted a new capital programme at the Cabinet last week, which will deliver real improvements for people. We recently launched our Race Commission as well, led by Councillor Asma Begum, another of our deputy mayors, building on understanding through the lived experience of Black, Asian and minority ethnic residents, an action plan to help keep equality at the heart of our community. And we were the first council to proactively remove a statue of a former slave trader, Mr. Robert Milligan, on West India Quay. And then we launched a project to work with the public to identify other sites and memorials which need to be better contextualised or removed or renamed. We supported hundreds of residents following the tragic Bow crane collapse, which is a terrible catastrophe that happened in a part of Bromley by Bow.
You have 30 seconds left.
But I think that's really good because I've got 30 seconds left to say. So most importantly, we've continued often in new and different ways to deliver the range of services our residents rely on in the council for despite the challenging circumstances brought by the pandemic. In the past 6 months has been a test of all of us, but we've risen to the challenge. In the coming months, we'll ask more of us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Denbiggs.
Days ahead, but I have faith our council and community will continue to demonstrate the East End grit, resilience and sense of unity which have seen us succeed through the crisis so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Time is over.
Thank you for your thoughtful chairing, Mr. Speaker, as well.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Gorse, leader of the Conservative Group, would you like to respond to the Mayor's report? You have 4 minutes.
I think that goes without asking that I'd be absolutely delighted to respond. May I begin by saying for about 90% of what the Mayor said, I would agree with every word. And I will concur, and indeed I will support the Mayor in saying that everybody, absolutely everybody, needs to stand together and understand what this pandemic is all about. At the very first Cabinet meeting, when it was just being discussed, I asked a number of questions on health. I asked about the potentiality for residents within this borough who could be subject to diabetes, sickle cell anemia and vitamin D deficiencies, all of which have been proven to affect people who come in contact with COVID. And I'm delighted to say that it's now coming up into the news, but unfortunately in many ways it's too many months too late, because if I were able to ask back in March the problems of diabetes, sickle cell anemia, vitamin D deficiency, there must have been far greater brains and heads than me and the powers that be who ought to have known that, and it ought not to have been necessarily rising just here. Can I make one further plea to the Mayor, and I really would plea on this on the Mayor, is to make sure that the Council, and indeed I believe the Mayor as the focus of the work in the borough, does as much as possible to encourage people to be tested and to understand the importance of being tested. and to kick away from what terrifies me, and it's the only word I can use, terrifies me, are the prospects of conspiracy theories circulating. I'm delighted that we have testing centres in the borough, but I want more testing centres in the borough, and I don't like hearing in public that there is something terribly suspicious, or as this is going against people or is hurting people. Our testing centres will save lives. That is where they're there for. And it doesn't matter if you go in a public building such as Watney, in the Idea Store in Watney Market, as many people as possible can go in there and be tested, and there is the potentiality of lives being saved. And I don't care if thousands of people are tested in Watney Market. If it saves one life, it saves one life. And that is what is important. And we must make sure that people understand that the testing is for their good and their health. And they must understand that people who are saying otherwise are conspiracy theories. And I would plead with the Mayor, and I would plead with the administration, I would plead with our health people to make sure that word gets out that testing is for the benefit of people and is not a hindrance. I'm very, very lucky. I was born of the generation. People born before me knew the horrors of infantile paralysis, whooping cough, and other such diseases. As a very, very small child, I queued up at my primary school to have all the injections that made sure I never suffered, my brothers never suffered from all those terrible diseases that inflicted other people. And I am horrified to live in an environment where seemingly intelligent people are saying,
30 seconds left.
Are saying that you shouldn't go to your doctor, you shouldn't be injected, you shouldn't be inoculated. This is crazy, and we need to come about that. I would have responded to some of the other political points that the Mayor made, but I actually believe that tonight is the time for actually making the points that bring the borough together and not necessary party political points.
Thank you, Councillor Peter Gold. Mayor John Biggs, would you like to respond? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think your firm chairing is exactly the right thing to do. Occasionally, we must be able to finish sentences, I guess. But thank you. And I agree with virtually everything that Peter Golds has said. I think it's really important that we try to deal with this matter with some unity, because otherwise we are pretty well doomed. I mean, I'm very, very anxious that the Prime Minister is out of his depth on this issue, that the guidance from government needs to be tweaked. But I think a bit like doing everything wrong in the first case and then getting to do the right thing in the end, we must hope that very rapidly they get towards better solutions, which is about local testing and local control of this terrible virus, because without us having that, we're going to be too slow and unresponsive with this terrible issue. But on the testing centres, Peter Golds is right, but I think I'd interpret what he says slightly differently. It's not about just telling people that testing centres are good for them, but it's about maintaining public confidence and showing leadership, and that includes all of the councillors and other public leaders in our community in making sure that we are confident that we're doing the right things, that we get back to people from the Mayor to the councillors, to everyone else, where we think that there are problems with the way in which we're dealing with the pandemic. It's about economic reassurance. A lot of people are terrified that with COVID, if they're told to lock down, they won't have any money. So we've lobbied for, and we've played a role in getting this £500 payment, which has now been offered by the government. We need to get to the detail of quite how it works. So there's a lot of things we need to do.
You have 30 seconds left.
Thank you, Abba. We have to reassure people. We need to act as leaders. Very hazardous time, but thank you for all the support across the community in Tower Hamlets, and thank you for your leadership, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor John Biggs. The guillotine will fall at 10:12 past 10. I will take the next report. Councillor Hassel, you have 3 minutes. I will move to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to present this report to you all as fellow corporate parents. Our vision is that we ensure every chance for every child to be happy, healthy, safe and successful, and this is especially important for all the children in our care. This report, the first such one to full council, outlines the role, structure and the work of the board, which includes council members, officers and other partners such as health representatives. It demonstrates how that board acts as a corporate parent on behalf of all members of this council. This year we've improved our engagement and input from young people themselves, which has been a really powerful experience, and the report sets out the issues raised and how we've responded to these, delivering on our commitments. We intend to go further to embed and amplify the voice of children and young people in shaping their services. This year we've seen some really positive examples of how the council, across a range of services, can be working to support our children and improve their life chances. This year we want to go further to ensure that all across the council and across our wider partnerships there is a focus on what we can all do collectively to support the children in our care and care leavers. I look forward to working with all members in this work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Councillors. I propose the recommendation in the report and the remaining uncontested nomination are agreed unless there are any objection. Thank you.
Great, sir. Thank you.
The guillotine has now fallen. The member.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to raise a point of order if I can.
Sorry? Yes.
Sorry, I do need to raise a point of order regarding the last item on the agenda for this evening. I understand that we won't be discussing it, but the final written question submitted by one of the councillors for Shadwell Ward refers to rough sleepers as a menace who need to be eradicated. Language matters. According to a recent report from Crisis, 80% of recent or current rough sleepers have suffered some form of violence, abuse or antisocial behaviour in the past year. I think it's important that we recognise that homelessness affects many residents, not only those directly experiencing it, but I don't think it's ever appropriate for people to be dehumanised in this way. So my point of order is that I'd like to urge Councillor Mia to retable his question in more sensitive language that respects the dignity and humanity of those who are forced to sleep rough.
Thank you.
Hear, 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 hear.
Agree with that.
The guillotine has now fallen. The member's question will be noted. Thank you. The first virtual council meeting. That concludes the business of my first virtual council meeting. Thank you for your contribution. I now close the meeting. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, Mr. Speaker.